Hello everyone and welcome to State of the Realm, your weekly Final Fantasy XIV podcast. This week, well, we told you we'd put a show together somehow, so we decided we haven't talked about rating in a while, so let's talk about rating, going over the history of the 3.x series and our expectations going towards 4.x. So, I am one of your hosts, Michael, Mr. Happy Poveromo. Of course, joining me is Slyh, aka Slythefox, aka Slyh, aka Greyfox, aka you my boy Blue. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing swell. Tell me, how far are you in Persona 5 now?
Done.
Done? Are we New Game Plussing it?
Yeah, of course we are.
He's like, what do I look like? I'm not a fan? Of course we're New Game Plussing it. Yeah. And we can, you know what? You know, Slyh and I, we finished the creator. We've had our fair share of ups and downs in the rating, but we couldn't do this show without getting a top tier expert and memer. So we brought on someone we haven't had, I think, in over a year.
Welcome, Fulvosaurus Rex, to the show.
No, that's shit poster, not memer.
And we're going to have that show, by the way.
That's not full, by the way. That's Layla Bell. Although because I didn't want to confuse people, when they see the picture of you and they see the name's Layla, I'm gonna call it. We may refer to you as Klops occasionally. And I want to ask you, what we have to start a show. Why are you Layla in 14 but not Klops? Where is Klops?
Klops is probably somewhere in Dalaran right now, but I think I don't actually remember why I made my character named Layla. It's from 14 1.0. I don't remember why. I think I just looked at my cat and I was like, "You look like a Layla." So she was named Layla. But the story of where Klops comes from is an entirely separate thing.
the meme. So Layla doesn't have a webcam.
Yes.
So,
no webcam today, unfortunately.
So we have a picture of him, and the meme now is already in the chat that you are actually Yoshi P because he is in the picture. So yes, this is Yoshi P.
I mean, that was my intention.
Yeah, I figured as much. So we've got that swell-looking picture of Klops / Layla. So welcome to the show. When was the last time you were on? Was it after 3.0 or 3.2?
Ooh, I mean, it has been a long time. The last time I was on, I believe we were talking about Midas, so it had to have been after 3.2.
Yeah, okay. I couldn't remember if we had the Midas conversation or not at all. So it's been a while. Why don't you why don't you reintroduce yourself to people who may not have watched the show or may have not watched that episode or become a fan since that episode?
Okay. So, yeah, Layla Bell, I have been raiding since 2.0, and I've been raiding at a fairly, what I would, I guess, say is a hardcore level, you know, playing the game probably more so than most people, probably more so than I should have at times, but I've been a part of every progression patch and every major raid content release since Realm Reborn's inception, and sometime around Heavensward, a little bit before Heavensward, I worked together with my friends in Death and Taxes when I was in Collision at the time, and we formed Elysium, and I helped co-lead Elysium for the majority of Heavensward.
Awesome. Well, glad to have your expertise. We're going to be asking you a lot of questions because you and I did World Prog side by side, not in the same group in 3.0, but I've since kind of just I've gone casual since then, Layla.
Same.
I've gone. Have you really though? Like 4.0 is coming. There's a difference between the game not having a patch, Layla, for a while, and being casual. You understand that, right?
I mean, I haven't even killed.
Are those the same thing?
I've never even seen the new Ultima. Like, I'm just casual.
Did you just apply not doing Dunscape makes you casual?
Yes.
Okay.
I have not done the recent content.
All right. Well, all right. Layla's casual, ladies and gents.
So you recently did a analysis video of rating in all of 3.0. What inspired you to do that?
So yeah, that was something I did on my stream the other day. Actually, what inspired me was mostly I was just sort of brainstorming like something fun I could do with my stream, because I don't get to stream as much as I would like to, because I have difficulty finding things I feel that are fun to watch. So I was just thinking about something that I could do a stream about that maybe I haven't streamed about 20 times before already. With Stormblood coming up, I thought it would be a really fun idea to sort of look at how the game has evolved leading up to this point, because we've sort of learned a lot about what has worked well and sort of some of the things that haven't worked well. And I just thought it would be an interesting use of time to analyze both what worked well and what didn't work well.
And it was well done, by the way. And I remember actually seeing your videos of analysis from specific fights and the tiers.
Yeah.
Oh God, the Midas video. We're gonna refer to the Midas video a little bit later, because there's a specific term you use there that we definitely want to revisit.
I probably know what you're talking about.
Oh yeah. I actually want to take it back to 2.x. I didn't actually know you until I think 2.4.
Maybe 2.4, 2.5, something like that. Yeah.
I think it was around that time. So you said you were part of every major progression patch. I wasn't too familiar with too many of the different raiders in the Twin Tanya days. So give us the rundown on your interest in world progression with Final Fantasy 14 in particular.
Back in Realm Reborn, are you asking about?
Going all the way back to Realm Reborn. What got you interested in world prog there?
I didn't actually sort of invest myself into hardcore progression rating until I would say Second Coil Savage. So Binding Coil, I put together a group of friends who we went through at a pretty casual pace. I think we were like a 2 or 3 day a week raiding team, 4 hours a night. But the game was new to us. It was new to, I guess, everybody, but we were still kind of trying to figure things out and the best way to approach the game and raiding in the game. I think a lot of the people I was playing with became much more interested in pushing ourselves and seeing how far we could go after Second Coil. We talked about it's been beat to death on streams countless times about the boom of Gilgamesh after Second Coil, but I was on Gilgamesh, and it definitely affected my sort of interest level in raiding. So I think Second Coil Savage would be my first sort of experience with raiding on world progression level.
Good. Somebody in the chat's already remembering the last time you were on the show where we talked about the deletion of one of the characters.
Oh yeah.
I'm glad. You know what? They never forgot you, Layla.
Yeah, I sort of wish that they would forget that, but that's okay.
I did, honestly, until I was like, I had put that out of my mind.
Unfortunately, I had forgotten too until now. So
it's like losing the game.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly that. It's something I don't actually want to think about.
Oh man.
So what really, seeing how you do prog now in WoW, what made you really, really want to get into prog for 14?
Are you speaking on like a hardcore progression rating schedule?
Yeah, because you seem to enjoy, like, you even had the joke in the pre-show for Layla WoW, because that's what you've been playing recently. So why 14?
It's mostly just because all people who follow me on Twitter, all they see lately are WoW tweets. So people joke that you should just rename yourself to Layla WoW instead of Layla Final Fantasy. But I think and I've talked about this a little bit before, but for me and the friends that I raided with, it was always about wanting to push ourselves and challenge ourselves and use whatever the game gives us to do so. And we felt the most challenging options available to us was, seeing how far we can take this progression rating thing, and see where we can take our teamwork and stuff. And that was sort of the driving motivation behind it, I would say.
And you don't have that motivation for WoW?
For WoW, it's different because I've played WoW for over 10 years. So a lot of the stuff that I've wanted to do in WoW, I've kind of already done. WoW, I just find there's a lot of, because I don't have the same type of schedule in WoW as we do in say Final Fantasy 14, we're a lot more laid back, and WoW, it takes me longer to get through this stuff. So there's a lot more stuff for me to do on a daily basis. Whereas in 14, we typically just blitz through everything, and then we run out of stuff to do.
We could probably make an entire show about that.
Yeah.
So of the raid tiers of 2.x, which would you say you liked the most? Because, I mean, regardless of world progression, I guess. What would you say is your favorite raid tier from back in those days?
Probably Second Coil. I don't know if we're including Second Coil Savage. I'm going to say Second Coil Savage. I don't know if we want it. Okay, then I would definitely say Second Coil Savage is my most favorite memories of Realm Reborn. I felt that Final Coil was probably second. I would say.
Listen, if you had said that you put First Coil above either of them after that shit show.
No. Binding Coil was it was like almost, I don't want to call it an experiment, but it was sort of a dry run for, what we saw in Second Coil. There were some cool things in Binding Coil though. Like I like the environment of turn 1 with the different varying levels of Z-axis and the involvement in that in the fight. I kind of am sad that we don't see more of that, but I know that they've said that they don't want to mess with Z-axes in encounters because of how abusable they can become or how buggy they can become.
True story. On Sargatanis, there was a guild that I think about a week after Second Coil came out, they positional hacked the game, the entire guild, and they put themselves up above all the bosses and just killed them from above.
I have a faint memory of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a group on Sargatanis.
There were a lot of bans that went out for that, right?
Yeah, no, I think 16 people were banned, and they were
I
all from that free company. Good times. We were like, how did they beat 6, 7, and 8 within an hour of each other?
Yeah.
Sure enough. Oh man.
But I think if I were to decide between Second Coil or not Second Coil Savage, but Second Coil or Final Coil, I'd probably favor Final Coil. Second Coil was done very well. However, one of the biggest problems I think that I have with Second Coil is sort of what nobody really talks about when they're looking through it with nostalgia glasses, and that every single fight in Second Coil was solo tankable. And that really is a big turnoff for me. And they addressed a lot of that in Second Coil Savage, which is why I like Second Coil Savage so much.
Yeah. So you have a thing with balance in terms of...
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't want this one tank, 2 healer, 5 DPS meta.
No. And I think one of the things that I spent a lot of time talking about on my stream analysis the other day is the importance of shared responsibility in encounters.
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
I think that if you have a fight where one tank is doing everything, I don't think that's designed very well. I like seeing shared responsibility across roles.
Quick question: does shared responsibility equate to difficulty, though?
It can for certain. I think that I want to use Brute Justice as an example.
I knew that was coming.
Oh yeah, for sure, because it's the most clear example. In the final phase of Brute Justice Savage, where you're fighting Wing Justice, if you're doing the sack strat, which kind of everyone was, your off tank is essentially doing nothing for the entirety of that phase, and that's honestly the hardest phase of the fight, I would say. Maybe not if you're doing sack strat, but typically speak, I think it's fair to say that's one of the hardest phases of the fight. And when one tank's doing everything and the other tank's not doing anything, then there's a large disparity in difficulty between their two jobs. So yeah, on one hand, it kind of can sort of affect the difficulty.
Yeah. I agree with that. I wasn't a big fan of a lot of... Well, when we get to talking about Midas in the show, there's a lot of things to say about Midas that we'll be able to say in a little bit.
So pretty much 2.0 has been a non-factor for about 2 years besides people, going in and getting,
I love Wondrous Tales, Sly. Don't talk shit about Wondrous Tales.
Oh, believe me, I'm a huge proponent of Wondrous Tales. You know that.
It sucks.
Yeah, it really does. But now we've been dealing with the ups and downs of or the roller coaster of 3.0 rating. What were your expectations going into Gordius?
Expectations. I mean, it was a lot of unknown. I think we had. So we went from Second Coil Savage to Final Coil, and there was a large difference in how those two functioned, and because there was such a jump in what I would describe as difficulty, we didn't really know what they were going to do with Gordius, because they had just gone from one extreme to the other extreme between Second Coil Savage and Final Coil. So with Gordius, what's going to be their goal? Which formula did they like better? Did they like the Second Coil Savage formula, or did they like the Final Coil formula? So I think based on some of the live letters that were coming out, there was a lot of chatter on the official forums about how people were saying, "Oh, Final Coil maybe too easy." We Raiders want to challenge SE, feed us, and I think that what ended up happening was
Sly. Let him finish before you get depressed about Gordius Savage. Let him. What
ended up happening is SE heard that, and when they made Gordius, it was with that in mind that their Raiders wanted a bit more of a challenge, and they definitely accomplished that. To just kind of maybe put about it the wrong way.
No. They did everything fucking right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
we just asked for two. We got what we asked for.
Yeah.
That's my only thing. That's the only thing. We got what we asked for. If you could describe how you felt about Gordius after the fact in one phrase, what would you use?
Well, my feelings about Gordius have changed over the last year and a half.
Okay.
I think directly after Gordius, I felt that with the exception of a few things about the manipulator, it was a fantastic tier. And I felt that a fight like A3, for example, was the perfect fight. It was exactly what it should be in Gordius. I think the 1.5 to 2 years later that we're in now, I think that in hindsight, a fight like A3 probably shouldn't have been, the tuning that was a part of A3 probably shouldn't have been applied to the third fight of the tier. Mm-hmm. I think that was maybe not healthy for the game's rating scene, and probably caused more harm than good. Okay. But I think that if maybe that kind of tuning and difficulty were applied to the final boss of the tier would be viewed a lot more favorably by everyone.
Now, one thing you said A3 did a good job of is shared responsibility.
Yeah.
Listen, with Digititis, I got nothing else, man. I see Digititis alone, and I go, all right, that's not even breaking. Ugh, nightmares. I'm getting PTSD right now.
Do you think taking away some of that shared responsibility would have helped in the tuning of the actual fight itself? In terms of alone?
Not really. I mean, I look at the equal responsibility extremely favorably when I think about A3. I think about there was essentially, for all intents and purposes, mandatory tank swaps. So you had to have both tanks tanking at different parts of the fight. And also because the fight sort of reset itself halfway through the phase and started over, you had to have, what one tank was doing before, now the other tank is having to do that job. So by the end of the fight, they've done everything. So for tanking, it was fantastic, and I don't think I would touch anything. For healing, I think that one of the big themes of Gordius was let the healers do everything. So if I was thinking about would I take away something, I think that maybe there was a little bit too much stress on the healers in Gordius. We threw a lot of mechanics at our healers just because we felt that the healers handled them best, and that put a lot of stress on the healers. So maybe shift some of the responsibility from the healers to, say, a DPS.
I feel like that was true at Second Coil Savage too, though. Like I remember being
historically, it's been pretty true. For
bored as shit. I remember I was like, okay, time to do Second Coil, full I-110, and I'm just like, other than rotating and hitting the tower in A8 Savage, I'm good, man.
Well, what ends up happening is when you're seeking to maximize your team's DPS, I mean, you're always going to try to give your DPS as few mechanics as possible, and give your tanks and healers as many as they can handle, just to take the responsibility away from your DPS. And that, that's historically been true. There are ways that they could force that to not be a thing, and they sort of do in some of their encounters after Gordius. I think about I think about Brute Justice again. There was a lot of mechanics that were forced on your DPS. When I think about legislation, it was forced on your DPS. Some parts of Gavel were forced on your DPS. There are ways that they could force the DPS to have to do mechanics rather than giving us the option to take the responsibility off them and put them on somebody else.
So I'm actually curious. We've been talking a lot about Alexander Savage, but how do you feel about the 2 difficulty format anyway? Because I mean, we have that. That's what we're going into with the expansion, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. Are you
right.
Are you pro coil or are you pro multiple difficulty?
Ooh, I think that's. So I'm definitely somewhere in between, but look, I don't know if I can pick exactly one, but I'm going to give you pros and cons. I think.
All right, let's do that.
Okay, so the coil formula, some of the things that were great about the coil formula is players who wanted to experience the story couldn't just queue up and get it done in an instant. You had to put together a team, and you had to try your hand at raiding to get through it. And a lot of people, maybe not a lot, but some people didn't enjoy that fact that the storyline was gated behind having to form a raid team and go through the raid tier. And that, I guess, wasn't in everyone's interest. What I thought was really good about that, though, was it forced you to work together with the people on your server, which I think is a really fun part about an MMO, especially an MMO that's server-based.
Wait. Did you just say you want your online game to force you to play with other people?
I know it's radical, but that is where I'm coming from, yes. So I think that's the one of the things that I enjoyed about Coil is, having to sort of form a team and not be able to just queue through a raid finder and get it done in 1 hour, and then that's it. That being said, one of the things that some people didn't like was that very fact that they had to do that to get to the story, and that's sort of the purpose of normal modes in the game now. You have the people who can't afford the time to put together a raid team and stick to a raiding schedule. They're now able to experience all the story that the game has to offer. So I do identify as that as being important, which is why I'm somewhere in the middle. I think maybe the normal modes that exist in their current form are a little too easy. Maybe let's make them not clearable when like 2 of your DPS are AFK and you have no communication with your team whatsoever.
Those are 2 very specific conditions that you have.
Yeah, I think that's something that maybe we could shoot for the future. Because I do sympathize with the fact that not everybody can play the game on at a schedule that's qualifies for rating, but I think we got to do something a little bit harder than the current normal ones.
Kind of to piggyback off that, do you think adding a second difficulty and the inclusion of things like a data center PF kind of take away from the whole using the community that you have, and it's more, I don't know, isolationist or self-preservation rather than working along with your server?
100%. I felt that way for a long time about many different MMOs, actually. One of the things that drew me to Final Fantasy was actually that sort of back to the old style of doing things where, when Realm Reborn first came out, we didn't have cross-server party finders. We didn't or parser raid finders and stuff. We didn't have anything like that, so we were forced to act within our community that we develop and grow on our server, and that was one of the biggest things that I enjoyed about the game, actually. So I'm definitely sad when I see them take away that anything that takes away from that aspect. I don't think it's damaged. I don't think the raid finder and the cross server raid finder and the cross server PF that they have implemented, I don't think that's taken away much so far. But if I were them, I would be very careful, because I know that a lot of people do enjoy sort of the communal atmosphere that 14 offers compared to other games.
And then Gilgamesh happened.
Well, yeah, I mean, then you had the sort of the everyone flocking to Gilgamesh.
The Exodus.
Yeah, the Exodus,
as we call it. All right, so jokes aside, let's tackle Gordius first. It's the first raid tier of 3.x. Now, great. Thanks, Slyh. Slyh, as you can see,
I love Gordius, man. Don't worry about Slyh. I'm here to talk about Gordius and enjoy every moment of it.
Oh, don't worry. I'll let Slyh get some words. Let some words get in, because I know he's got words about Gordius. So okay, A1 Savage goes down, A2 Savage goes down. Those two actually go down pretty reasonably. Like even just looking at the times we have for like Midas and Creator. In terms of the first two encounters, nobody really talks about A1 and A2 because people just roll over them nowadays if they do them at all. What did you, when you did A1 and A2 Savage, you know, you're going through, that's your first time, that's your first Heavensward Savage progression. How did you feel about them as you were progressing through them, as opposed to how they're kind of viewed in the community now?
A1 behaved a lot like it's okay. So to preface this, we had before we started Savage Gordius, we had 2 weeks of a normal mode that we were able to practice in and test, and because of that, we sort of had a very strong understanding of how a fight like A1 was going to play out. You know, because the way that they designed A1 Savage, it behaved pretty damn similarly to the normal mode, with very minor exceptions that you sort of figure out in one or two pulls. So I think that, and I highlighted this on my raid analysis, my Heavensward analysis before, but I think that the thing that was good about A1 was that it was because it was the first encounter, people were testing with a lot of different party compositions and job job combinations, and A1 was a fight that sort of allowed for each and every one of those combinations to sort of flourish. You could have strengths in many different types of party compositions, and I thought that was really good as an opening fight to an expansion, when everyone's kind of trying to figure things out. And I also think that it wasn't necessarily a bad thing that it behaved similarly to the normal mode. You know, this is supposed to be an entry level fight, and one of the things that entry level fights are supposed to do is they're supposed to be killable by the majority of raiders, because what teams will do if they're having difficulty in later fights is they will use those entry level fights to gear up for the harder fights. And that's really important for the people who are maybe only raiding 2 or 3 days a week.
So I'm going to interrupt you before we get your thoughts on A2 Savage. But we're talking about being the entrance encounter. Oh, there's...
yes.
There's...
My mistake. I forgot about the other entrance encounter.
There's another entrance encounter before you even get to the oppressor. Mm-hmm. And that's our boy Faust, the doorman.
I forgot about him. Yeah, the doorman. So that's really funny. I forgot about him when I did this talk earlier too. I think so. When I think about Faust was a giant DPS check for people, and what it does is it basically said, you must be this tall to raid in Heavensward.
That is perfect.
It's exactly accurate.
True.
Yeah, that's what Faust was. I think that I think Faust was fine. I think it taught people to how to work together at a minor level and press your buttons at a decent enough level.
Did it really? Because there were a few who...
There's a lot of forum posts.
Yeah. There were quite a few who took it the other way and just said, fuck this shit, I'm out. like
Well,
for this entire tier.
So when I'm thinking about Gordius, it was a necessary evil for Gordius. Now, because it basically said if you don't meet this requirement, Gordius is not going to work for you, and that itself is a kind of a separate thing, like whether or not that's good or bad. But I think for Gordius specifically, post all of the fight design that they've done through 1 through 4, Faust is sort of the hey. You have to be able to tackle me to be able to handle what's behind me. So if they wanted to make Faust a little bit easier, then it's not going to serve that same purpose. I guess that's sort of the point that I would want to make about it.
Do you think, and this is just thinking ahead, do you think going forward into Stormblood, a kind of Doorman-esque mechanic would be needed? Or necessary?
Not necessarily. I mean, what they can do is they can do, honestly, what maybe they should have done, and just make the first boss the sort of entrance exam, the check, to be able to continue rating in the tier. You don't necessarily need a Faust. Say they design the Oppressor to be the Faust of the tier. It'd be a much more rewarding process than you go through the struggle of getting past Faust only to have a boss in front of you and no loot.
And then not finish it in the lockout and have to kill Faust.
So yeah, I think that is something that I didn't like. Having to re-kill the Faust every time we rezoned in, which is one of the arguments I would make for maybe excluding him and just making the boss the check.
What do you do like turn 3? Just turn 3, put a Faust in there. Just make that the first turn.
Yeah.
I don't ever want turn 3 again,
Maybe.
Layla. Don't worry. I don't ever want when all 8 go tank and you see who can make it to the bottom first.
It's very true stories actually, but
I know.
And this is something that they repeated.
Yeah, they literally did it every single tier.
Every
became a theme of Heavensward.
Yeah. Having the doorman.
He was the dive bombs of Gordius.
One thing I will say is that I think that of the Fausts, I think the last Faust they released was definitely the least menacing. I think that in terms of like difficulty, I think it would probably go the Gordius Faust, Midas Faust, then Creator Faust.
Which is pretty in line with the raid tiers themselves.
Yeah, I guess you're right, yeah.
So we got A1 Savage, the Oppressor, which is the perfect description for a boss in Gordius. Then you have A2 Savage, which I know is Sly's favorite fight in the entire raid tier. He talks about how much he loves riding the Gobwalker all the time and not actually having to play the game.
Yeah, it shows.
Yeah, it shows that he actually went to go turn on his PlayStation 4 to do A2 Savage right now.
Oh, right, yes. Yeah. I'll join him. Let me log on.
All right, there you go. So A2 Savage is very different progression-wise. I don't know how you felt about it. To me, it took me back to like turn 4, but way more like annoying.
Well, okay, so it appears that I want to be in the minority here. So let me, before you get your pitchforks, let me make my case. I think that I'm actually one of the few who really enjoyed A2 and really enjoyed A2 progression.
Thanks, eye roll, Sly.
So one of the reasons why I think I enjoyed it so much is because it was when we were practicing for Gordius in normal mode, it was the encounter that was the biggest wild card. There's so many possible options for how you can use the car. What were they called? I don't remember what they were.
The Gobwalkers.
The Gobwalker. There were so many.
See, he knows it so well.
There were so many different possibilities you could use the Gobwalker for that. When we were preparing for Savage, we were coming up with these very different strategies for how to use it, and I thought that was a really fun process. Whereas when we were learning the other encounters, it was okay, map this mechanic. Okay, what does it do? All right, check, move on. This was okay. What could happen? What could they possibly throw at us in Savage that would make us use this Gobwalker a certain way? Okay, let's plan for that. Okay, what if they do this? Oh, that means maybe having a DPS drive it is not the best idea. What about healers driving it? Maybe does that work? Should tank drive it? How should they use their energy? It was just so. What if there's 2 Gobwalkers? there was just so many possibilities that it was really fun to plan for. So when we went through A2, that's why I thought it was really fun. Removing that, I think the fight unfolds a little bit uninteresting in that it's just like 7 waves of goblins, and that part is maybe not very interesting. But
this is really the first time we've seen kind of a gauntlet in a gauntlet type tier. You had turn 4.
Turn 4, yeah.
It was just a gauntlet, and I'll give you that. It was.
We never had one after that. This was really the first one since then.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah. I mean, can you call turn 4 a true gauntlet? I think it's kind of. I mean, it has
timers.
Yeah.
And
you could call it a gauntlet, I suppose.
Turn 3 is not a gauntlet, chat. Turn 3 is not a gauntlet.
Turn 3 is not a gauntlet. I don't know. I mean, A2 was really just a continuation of their idea of turn 4, and I don't know if they're the best way to go about a gauntlet encounter, but it was clearly evident that it was what they learned from turn 4. You could see play out in A2.
Mm-hmm.
I got bad memories of. See, I'm lucky. We did the. I don't know what strategy you did, Layla. We did the healer and the gobwalker for the first half, and me and the gobwalker for the last 2 waves.
So we did. We did a little backwards from I think how most teams did it. It was just particularly it's just how our team worked. But we had our scholar handling the gobwalker for the first. I want to say, were there 9 waves total, or were there 7 waves total?
I think there were 9 waves. I remember going because the first 6 waves go really fast. I think I think wave 6 or 7 is the 4 panzers.
I want to say there's between 7 and 9. We'll go with 9.
Yeah.
But the point is that we had our scholar doing it for the first 7 or so waves, and then we had a DPS jump into it. That's how
I mean, we were in the same free company, so that's probably why our group evolved it that way.
Now I know that most people had their white mage do it, as I recall. I remember when I was talking to Goka about it. I'm pretty sure that they had their white mage do it. I can't. It's been too long.
Does the pet stay outside the gobwalker and heal at all?
Yes, it does.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it still does, but it did back then.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because then it's the same as having 2 healers anyway, let's be honest, with the way Gordius went.
Yes. I'm trying to remember.
Slyh, I think Slyh did it for all 9 waves. That's why he's shaking his head.
Oh, no.
I think Slyh did it for all 9 waves.
Oh, that's just not fair. Nobody deserves that.
Thank you for the sentiment. Thank you.
Have a Snickers.
All right. So you like day 2? Got it.
I love day 2. Yeah.
All right.
Fuck it.
Slyh, you want to take the next?
Fuck people touching the fucking bomb.
Oh yeah. I think that one of the greatest things about A2 that I would love to see them figure out how to implement again in Stormblood was the management of the energy in the Gobwalker. That led to so much customization in how you approach the fight that expanded beyond just simple rotations.
I remember why we didn't send the white mage into the Gobwalker, because Fluid Aura worked on the bombs if
Fluid Aura did.
If the Gobwalker person fucked up. So did Machinist Blank, but Machinist was garbage at the time, so who cares?
Right, yeah. Well, maybe not garbage, but definitely unexplored and it didn't have any of the buffs it got.
No, it didn't. The only thing that was good is that it had the infinite AoE damage from the turret for a lot of those waves.
No.
Yeah. Slyh, you want to take the next one? Now we're done with A2. You can ask him about A3 because I know this is also your other favorite.
Nobody ever likes to talk about Gordius, man.
I like to talk about A3 Savage, and that's it.
I don't. Fuck Gordius.
All right. Well, I'll be the opposing viewpoint. Hit me.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get to the elephant in the room, which is A3. I was a victim. I was a victim of A3.
Show me on the doll where Pepsi Man touched you.
Everywhere. You got world first, and I think Hap, you have a clip of that.
Oh. I have the audio clip of the nerd stream. You won't. Don't worry, Layla. You won't hear it. They'll hear it. Okay. But I'm gonna warn everyone now. I don't know how the audio is gonna come out on the stream. You may want to consider turning your volume down.
Just max that shit, man.
That is the opposite of the advice that I would give you.
Man mode.
All right, let's see. Let's see what kind of volume we're looking at.
Play these fluids.
Play these fluids.
Stay right here, Senpai.
Turn my headphones down too. I'm
scared. Keep going, guys. Keep going. You're gonna kill me, Fold.
You're gonna kill me, Fold.
Oh, it's fucking dead. Burn it!
Burn it! Come on, big it! Burn it! Yes! Fucking fuck you! Oh my god! Oh! Fuck! Oh!
Yo, Leroy, good.
Yo, was that a one-shot, boys?
That was a one-shot.
Easy game.
So many memes were born of that clip. So many memes were born of that clip. I didn't realize till listening to it again how long Leroy is screaming. He's screaming about 5 seconds before the kill, and then for the next 30 seconds.
There is something special about that, man. That is a special human being. I love Leroy.
I heard he's coming back for Stormblood.
That's the
I saw Fold tweet it.
The rumor, yeah.
That's the rumor.
He's been talking to us a bit on Skype about wanting to play again, and
if we get quality clips like that, I'm all for it.
Leroy is one of my favorite people ever, and I hope he knows that.
Before we go on, Haps, please tell me that you have I Can't Feel My Feet for later.
I can't even feel my feet. I can just pull it up. I have all of Elysium's videos.
Okay, perfect.
I can just find it.
All right, we're good.
So, Layla, you have that memory of A3. You want to know what my memory of A3 Savage is, Layla?
I kind of know your memory of A3
Yeah,
Savage, but I'll listen to it again. I'll listen to it again.
So, I was in the world progression race too, Layla. Did you know that?
I did know that.
You did know that. Great. So the Saturday after you killed it, the first thing. That was actually a one-shot, by the way. That's not just a meme. It was actually a one-shot after reset.
Yes.
So that Saturday, the stars were aligned, Layla. We got LB2 in the last phase. We were ahead by 1.5%.
Did you get an entire extra LB?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh.
So you know how normally you LB1'd at the end, and that was it. We had an LB2 for the final push.
Okay.
And we were 1.5% ahead.
Well, it sort of depended. It depended where you used your LBs prior, because one thing that
we used them at the same point you did, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that we did was we used an LB3 to execute. So because we didn't use an LB3 on the second hand, which is what most people did. I'm assuming.
Yeah, we did Black Mage LB. Oh no, I think we did Bard LB3. I don't remember if we did Black Mage or Bard.
A lot of people found that the Bard LB was
because the Black Mage you just wanted to turret the whole time.
Yeah, and then the Bard could just keep the songs playing while he's LBing. So,
yeah.
But yeah, anyway, continue with your level.
So 1.5% ahead before the LB2. That's like as good as it's ever gonna get.
That's pretty good, yeah.
And then the last Pharaoh Fluid, the Bard and the Black Mage died.
Okay.
And we died with ACT not even displaying his health anymore. So that's sub 1,000, pretty much.
Yes.
And that was, and literally every time my raid team comes to the stream now, like my old raid team from those days, they like share the picture of the health bar. They like, Rochelle has that like, I swear it's the background on his computer.
Listen, man. Like,
and then we didn't kill it again till Monday, like an hour before.
I know some great support groups that I can get you in touch with if this is going to continue.
That's my nightmare. Like that coming back from that was tough, and then to only be met with manipulator after that.
Yeah, it's another topic.
Oh, yeah. All right, so I got my story. Sly, continue.
So we got to hear Hap's tragedy and just, my bullshit because I fuck it anyway. I've heard of a lot of hardcore raiders call A3 the ideal encounter. You call it the ideal encounter.
Yes.
For world progression. Some people, like myself, say it's utter fucking bullshit. Besides manipulator. What are your thoughts on A3? You call it an equal responsibility fight. And
yes, which is very important.
Favorites. And that's pretty different from I would say a good majority of the community.
So are you saying that the majority of the community doesn't enjoy having equal responsibility?
I think they would consider what healers are put through in that fight not equal responsibility.
Okay, sure. So I guess the point that I was more so trying to make is across your own role. I think that the white mage and the scholar, they both lift the same much. I think the tanks lift the same as their co-tank, and it doesn't necessarily mean that maybe the DPS are going to be doing the same as much work as the tanks are going to be doing, or the tanks are going to be doing as much work as the healers are doing. I don't know if there's an encounter that has ever perfectly balanced that, and I don't think there ever will be, just because we as players are always going to shift responsibility into the place where it's best utilized. And in the history of MMOs and raiding, typically that means the tank or healer is going to be doing something because we want our DPS free to be able to maximize their numbers. That being said, getting back to your initial question of how I feel about A3, I liked the fact that there was equal responsibility within the roles. I liked the tuning level of it in that it was a fight that required such perfect execution that if you did not have the maximum amount of uptime available and be doing the most optimal of your rotations, you would not be able to kill it with entry-level gear. As a progression raider, that is so amazing to me that they actually found that level of tuning and were able to apply it to a fight for week one. Because the thing, gear to me is not. I know that not everyone shares this opinion. This is just how I think about raiding. I don't care about gear.
Amen.
I really don't care about gear. Gear to me is just a stepladder to kill a boss, and beyond that, I don't really care. So the not having to need any gear to kill a boss and being able to kill it with what's available to me if I play perfectly, and not being rewarded if I don't play perfectly, was honestly one of the things that I was raiding for. And I found that in A3, and that's why A3 is such a favorable memory to me. The conclusion to the story that I sort of highlighted earlier was that the problem with all of this in Gordius was that this wasn't even the final boss. So the fact that there was something tuned even more difficult following that might have been the nail in the coffin for Gordius when you're looking at it in retrospect.
When I look at it in retrospect, I see the number of groups that did not even make it to A3 Savage. And then the number
because
that
they were stuck on A1 and A2, or not make it past A3?
No, the ones that, a lot of them, a lot of raid groups that were together for Coil couldn't even pass A1, man. There's a lot of raid groups.
Because of that. Okay, right. Yeah, so that's I think a product of the jump that happened from Final Coil to Gordius. And we should definitely highlight that as maybe being an issue. There's been a lot of people have brought up the idea that maybe if you flip Heavensward, if you flip it in that Gordius was the last tier, maybe Creator was the first tier.
Don't put me through Manipulator no matter where you flip it.
Okay. Well, ignoring Manipulator for a second, that I think that might have eased people into the process that they had to be a part of for Gordius, rather than here's Bahamut, which was killable, week one without any weapons, and then here's Gordius, where you're struggling to get past Faust. You go from killing a dragon god to not being able to kill a 4-foot robot. It is a little bit deflating, I understand.
I like that. All right. Do we have to talk about manipulate? I don't want to do it. Luckily, Layla's the guest. I can make him talk about it. I don't have to say anything.
You sure? You sure have?
I mean, yeah. I don't even know what I want to ask you about A4 Savage, Layla. It wasn't even like it was scaled super ridiculous, and then of course there's Nisi, but it was just fucking boring.
Oh, I definitely agree. So, yeah, I mean that to me is the most negative memory of Gordius, was just how uninteresting the opening phases of Manipulator were with the 4-leg phases. They were just not fun to navigate, especially, I mean, you will remember this better than I will, but being a melee throughout that fight, and the melee in the final phase was one of the least interesting things.
Let me just say, you and I do have different experiences there, because you did Nisi, we did Lucrezia strat. So Chia and Fold have a way different experience than I do, because we were learning Nisi when all the videos came out. And then we saw that, and we're like, well, fuck doing it normal. I'm not doing that shit.
Yeah, so I think if you're doing the Lucrezia strat, like you mentioned, the last phase of the fight is just a target dummy. The melee just sits there and hopes that everyone else in the party does good. That's really boring, because it takes you like 9 minutes to get to that point on a pull. And there's no guarantee that you're going to get, if you die there, there's no guarantee you're going to get back there. So it's a really grueling process for the melee, who are just like, please kill the boss for me. I'm doing everything I can back here. So I identify with that a little bit. But the fight itself, thematically, it was very unappealing. It's just a robot that doesn't move. Like I said earlier, we went from Dragon God to a 4-foot Faust robot to a walking trash can that doesn't move on 4 legs.
You're a walking trash can that doesn't move?
Not even.
Well, with Fluid Aura, it can.
Yeah, you could walk him off the edge of the Fluid Aura during that small period where it was bugged.
Oh, that was fun.
Yeah, he doesn't walk. I wish he walked, but he doesn't.
I mean, it would definitely be more fun if he walked.
Yeah, for certain.
I mean, fun. But I can imagine how much walking the boss in that case would change the fight. Like
that's such a small arena; it would get so clustered and crowded.
But think about things like positioning for the laser, for like the five tethers, and
imagine if he rocketed to different parts of the arena, and then you have to like reorient yourself.
I mean, Onslaughter does it when we get to. He's basically mini later. I don't know. I tried to make a mini manipulator, and I couldn't get it all in one word.
Yeah, I think that it would have created some cool dynamics if you moved.
Might have been, and hear me out here, fun.
Maybe.
I really.
But I think at the end of the day, like for the problem, I think with Manipulator was what we've already highlighted, that the melee's role in that fight was extremely uninteresting. So. Yeah.
That's how I felt during turn 7 Savage. I was like, good luck.
Same exact thing.
It's like, healers, you better get rid of the fucking debuff, bro, because I can't do it. Like, what?
I feel like, I forget if it was Chia or Yoda who made the comment that when they were attacking Melusine on their monk in turn 7 Savage, there was this entire world behind them that they didn't know existed.
I love
exactly
that.
Yes.
You see the kiters and the healers. Everyone's trying to spread out. There's fucking voices and things happening, and then
every now and then a bard will enter your peripheral vision. And you're like, oh, that's funny. I didn't know he was there.
What's that tether? Is that a tether? How does that work? And then you run back there and you're like, oh, there's this big thing. I better accidentally right click it and ruin the fight. I need to keep my stacks, guys. Come on. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, God.
So we've gone through all of Gordius. Do you think going from Final Coil, well, just Coil in general, to Gordius, that the devs did a good job of gauging the player base's ability? Do you think there was enough information from all of Coil to kind of set the difficulty to like a proper
10?
standard?
No. The short answer is no. I don't. Okay. I think that honestly where they missed the mark the most was the normal mode. I think that the normal mode needed to be a better stepping stone into Savage. If their goal was to make Savage a super difficult difficulty tier of difficulty, then you need to give your players a stepping stone for that. Because if you compare the normal mode of Gordius to the Savage level of Gordius, it's not even it's not comparable. It's just not. Doing normal does not prepare you for what you're going to encounter in Gordius Savage, other than you'll learn some of the mechanics on the first two bosses.
Yeah, that helped in A3 a lot.
Yeah, I mean, what you're supposed to do to get through Gordius is you're supposed to be able to understand how to maximize your uptime and do an optimal rotation. And normal mode does nothing to test either of those things. And I think that is where they miss the mark the most.
Fair enough.
Slightly, so you keep going. I can't.
Uh-oh.
The bad memories are flooding in.
We'll get off of Gordius. So, pretty much after Gordius, the raid scene was hit pretty hard. The next thing on the list, of course, Midas, which you thought to be, I think, the best. You said Midas was the best tier out of all three.
Out of the three, I would say that I would say that Midas was probably the best tier of the three. And that's just my opinion. Obviously, you ask 10 different people, you're probably gonna get 3 different answers. So I was gonna say 10 different answers. I'm like, wait,
it's like, wait, there's only 3.
That doesn't actually work.
Yeah, I mean, unless you want to break it down fight per fight and do 12 different answers.
You could do that, sure. Yeah, I mean, let's stick with that. Yeah, you ask 12 different people, you're probably gonna get 12 different answers of what the best fight of Heavensward is. I think that Midas, they definitely learned a lot from their quote unquote mistakes in Gordius. I think that that was really apparent in the normal mode, and one of the reasons I sort of brought up the normal mode in the last 5 minutes, because I knew that we were going to segue into Midas, and one of the things I want to highlight about Midas is the improvements they made to the normal mode. Now, they still didn't have normal mode be this tier of difficulty that's going to help you learn how to maximize your uptime. That's still missing from the equation. But the importance of the normal mode was a lot different compared to Gordius. The way that Midas Savage unfolded was a lot of the mechanics in Savage are present in normal mode, but Midas throws 2 to 3 of them at you at the same time. Or I'm sorry, Savage throws 2 to 3 of them at you at the same time. So progression through Savage Midas was sort of learning how to get through a fight when the mechanics you know from normal mode are coexisting. And that's the progression that occurs during Savage. And it's not this environment where your progression through Savage is learning how to maximize your uptime and do an optimal rotation when normal mode helps you do none of that. So normal mode assisted Savage a lot more in Midas than it did in Gordius. And I thought that was a very big improvement, and definitely something that I touted as being good for in Square Enix's design decisions. That being said, like I said before, I think that maybe the tuning of normal mode is a little bit too easy still, and that these are bosses that are falling over when you don't even know what the mechanics are. Tons of pugs went through and one-shot many of the bosses. Maybe not all of them, but pugs just formed and one-shot bosses without really even knowing the fight. And I think that that's potentially not what I would personally like to see, but I'm just one person.
One person.
And with Midas, another thing, Yoshi P said it would be less about DPS and more about mechanics. How accurate would you say that was, coming from being on one of the teams who pulled out the team who pulled out a world burst?
I think that that's a very true statement. I think that if that was their goal, they hit the mark. And one of the reasons I'm confident in saying that is because our team was we were special snowflakes who ran really weird comps that weren't necessarily maximized in DPS, and we still saw a lot of success with them. We ran teams that maybe favored a little bit more defensive utility than offensive utility because Midas allowed us to do that. The DPS checks weren't nearly as tight as you saw in Gordius. So, compositions that included Monk and Paladin, 2 classes that maybe weren't doing as much as, say Dark Knight and the Dragoon Ninja variant, unless you were on like a target dummy fight. But the compositions that included those 2 jobs were typically not viewed as being high DPS comp variants. and we saw a lot of success with them in Midas. So I think that there's a lot to be said about that.
So, all right, unlike A1 and A2 Savage, where like it was the first thing in Heavensward, like everyone's still kind of relearning their jobs, A5 Savage was pretty much we need to get people back into the raid scene after what
Yes.
Gordius did. How welcoming would you say Faust Z and A5 Savage were?
Okay, so just to sort of highlight what you're talking about, I mean, the raid scene after Gordius was at its worst state it's ever been. There was actually, quiet murmurings of Final Fantasy raiding may actually just be dead because of Gordius.
Yep.
It killed so many raids.
Oh, sorry, that was Hummel Faust. Faust Z is the one we have in Creator. Sorry,
Hummel,
there's too many
yes.
fucking Fausts. I can't.
I think the Square Enix had a lot on their shoulders with Midas, and they really had to win the scene back. And in my opinion, they did a pretty good job. I think that A5, when I think about it, so let's think about how A5 progresses. You have this cool environmental interaction with the puddles on the ground. You turn into fucking birds. I think that
Can we put that on a shirt? You turn into fucking birds.
Yeah, I thought that's really fun. It's something new that hasn't really been done in encounters before that. And what A5 is A5 is a fight that has no real DPS check whatsoever. Teams were skipping 2 or 3 of the phases when they killed the fight in the opening week, just because the DPS check was so lenient that it allowed teams to be able to just focus on the mechanics and not have to worry about their DPS check as much. And that's a much more enjoyable experience for somebody who's like suffering from PTSD from Gordius and trying to wean themselves back into raiding. A5, I think, was good for that purpose. Now I'm trying to remember Hummelfaust. I don't remember Hummelfaust being as much of a gate as the original Faust. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't have a recollection of it being as punishing.
So the one thing I remember the most about Hummelfaust is people just not being able to grasp the concept of don't stand in the middle of the fucking room when you're killing the other two. When you're killing the first
I mean,
two.
that's.
I know, but
You gotta be able to handle that, though.
I know, but people didn't. All right. But I remember a lot of people saying that they felt Hummelfaust had a tighter DPS check than the actual boss.
In the beginning, yes.
Yeah.
In the beginning. Yeah.
Like, Hummelfaust was a much
I agree
stricter
with that.
DPS check
I agree
than
with that.
actual A5 Savage.
Well, I think what they were trying to do with A5 was, okay, here's a DPS check. We want to see if you have at least this DPS check. Now here's a boss that's maybe more mechanically focused than DPS focused. Let's see you be able to handle a mechanics fight. So you have like a DPS check in Hummelfaust, and then you have a mechanic check in the A5 boss name I can't remember. Was it Rat Finks something?
It's stupid
Rat
goblin,
Fruit.
stupid goblin who
Twinkle
reminds me
Dicks.
of Lugae from Final Fantasy IV. There you go.
Okay.
Twinkle Dicks.
So I think that A5 was sort of like, okay, at least have this level of DPS, and at least be able to handle this level of mechanical difficulty. I think that was kind of their goal with A5, maybe.
I love what's next on the list, Sly. I realize I wrote out a lot of these show notes. I gave Sly every fight that he hates.
Let me think about this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh no.
Even I know Layla's also this falls pretty low on Layla's shit scale also.
Oh no.
Or high on it, depending on how the scale
But
tilts.
in all honesty,
That's right, we called them Twinkle Dicks for A5
yeah,
Savage.
Twinkle Dicks. That's
Twinkle
what I said. Now, in all honesty, A6 really wasn't that bad. Yeah, it broke up my my group.
But it wasn't that bad. It just destroyed my friendship.
Yeah, that was it.
It's like a game of Monopoly or Mario Party. Any game could do that.
Yeah, it just took out my static. Not all too bad. Yeah, I want you to give me your thoughts on this fight. Well, 2 thoughts specifically. One, with bugs. Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. Midas had no bugs.
There were no bugs in Midas. I know what you're talking about.
I don't understand. So I think that when I think about A6, I do have to look through it exactly how you described it. I have to look through the lens of a bugless fight and a fight that consists of game-breaking bugs. And if you're not aware, people who are listening, the opening 2 weeks, I believe, of A6 had a very large game-breaking bug, and it's what we'll eventually talk about. A6 was a very interesting style of progression. It's essentially 4 bosses in one turn, or whatever you would call them in Alexander. It's for all intents and purposes a gauntlet. Yeah, you're going from boss to
Probably
boss to
the
boss to boss.
truest form.
Exactly, and that's why I was so reluctant to call turn 4 in A2 a gauntlet before, because when I think about a gauntlet, I actually do think about something like A6, where you're going from one fight to another fight to another fight to another fight until you reach the end, and that was definitely how A6 played out. 4 different bosses, each with their own unique flavor and set of mechanics. So when you learn one, you then have to sort of put that aside and learn the next one, all while in the back of your mind trying to do so in a timely enough manner that you make an overall enrage timer. You had a certain amount of time to kill all four bosses, or else it was an auto wipe. So that was really fun. I thought the first 3 bosses of the gauntlet were extremely interesting to progress through. And
why only the first 3, Layla? What happened?
Well, it was slowly becoming my favorite fight, and by the time Swindler's the 3rd boss, and by the time Swindler was dead, I was like, Midas is amazing. Square Enix has done such a good job with this tier. This is the best tier they've ever made. I'm so happy I'm logged in right now.
And then you get the Vortexer.
And then we see Vortexer, and I just completely double back on everything I just said, because I hated the fact that I was logged in, and I wanted to uninstall. I think so one of the problems with Vortexer, I'll just quickly review it. There was a mechanic in the early stages of Vortexer that it was a mechanic that wasn't, I don't know if it wasn't coded properly or what the actual reasoning behind it was, but it didn't behave in its intended manner, and it behaved in a manner that actually induced an auto wipe. And whether or not that error occurred was entirely not in your control. And I know that there's going to be like 3 people in the chat that are just going to type vigorously at me in a rage and saying, "Oh, just it wasn't RNG. You could control it. It was RNG. You could not control it. It was just completely out of your control." And
how many crackpot theories came up about manipulating that fight? How many crackpot theories there were?
We have so much data, and other teams have so much data to show that any way you attempted to handle that mechanic, it ended in the same result of just the end result being completely RNG and not in your control. The one thing that I will say, and people who are familiar with A6 can maybe appreciate this, there was something relating to to distance relative to the boss that did cause the bug to appear less frequently, but it still occurred. And that's the interesting part, and that may just in the grand scheme of things be confirmation bias, but at least my team's opinion was when we positioned the boss a certain way, we saw the bug occur less than when we positioned it another way. And this was reflected in K-pop when, which is another team inside my FC. This was reflected when K-pop switched positionings for how they were handling the boss to from their strategy to what we were doing, and then they saw the bug a lot more frequently. So there was something there. However, in both of those scenarios, the bug was existing. So it's just, there's a lot of unknowns here. The bottom line is that it was there, and it was really annoying and stupid. And it ruins A6 for me. It's really unfortunate because, like I said, by the time we'd gotten to Swindler, it was becoming my favorite encounter and my favorite style of progression.
My favorite thing about A6 was that in A6 normal, you don't have to kill all 4 bosses in one go, but then in A6 Savage, you do have to kill all 4 bosses back to back to back. I don't know, something about that difference between normal and Savage, where in normal you could wipe on an individual boss, but then in Savage,
is that true? You don't have to.
No, yeah. If you wipe on one of the bosses in the gauntlet in normal mode, you don't have to start the whole gauntlet over.
I never knew that
because you probably did it once and didn't wipe.
I think I've only done A6 normal once ever. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's a difference between normal and Savage.
That's incredible. I never knew that.
Layla learns.
Yes.
All right. So just good thing to know. There's no bugs in Midas.
Mm-hmm. Great. None.
And I mean, let's be real here. A6 Savage, even after they fixed that bug, there's the ninja bug with A6 Savage, where if you use Shikuchi,
Oh, that was the Shikuchi. It doesn't spawn the tornado, correct? Or
yeah,
maybe, yeah. How did it work? It didn't spawn the tornado, or it spawned in the wrong spot, or something?
No, I'm trying to remember exactly how. I think it didn't spawn a tornado, but there was something with the bug because you had 30 seconds after that happened before you wiped. There's some interaction there where at 30 seconds after that happens, you wipe, like no matter what.
Sure. Okay. So
yeah.
the
crashing water disappears entirely.
Okay.
But then I think 30 seconds later, it still checks to see if the same person has it, and you just die automatically. I don't remember. I remember just immediately dying like 30 seconds later.
Right. So the one thing that we should highlight, because we've sort of only looked through A6 through the lens of bug. We didn't get to analyze it. Maybe say when the bug isn't present. I think that let's look. The bug was fixed 2 weeks into the patch, and let's think about how A6 sort of unfolded after that. At that point, A6 is a really cool encounter. However, what I found interesting. And I didn't get to pay attention as much while I was raiding, but I certainly saw a lot of it when I was done. A lot of people felt that A6 was overtuned, and even after the bug was fixed, they were still upset with Blaster's tuning, in the requirement that Blaster had to get through Blaster cleanly. And then what was the name of the second guy? It was Blaster.
It was Blaster, Brawler, Swindler, Vortexer. So and everyone thought they should be reversed because Brawler didn't brawl. He shot giant lasers, so they thought he should be Blaster.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Whereas Blaster summons the clones that charge you like a Brawler. Sure.
Do you think that's actually an error in localization?
No, I don't. strangely, I don't. It's just
that wouldn't be the first time we've seen that. I mean, the ninja abilities.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think I was definitely surprised to see that people felt A6 was overtuned. I don't know if they felt that way just because of how A7 was tuned, and we can get to that in a second. Mm-hmm. But post bug fix, I really enjoyed A6, and it's unfortunate that my memories of A6 are tarnished by the bug because it would probably go down as my favorite fight otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, A7 Savage is considered easier than A6. I think the big thing with A6 Savage is also how quickly the mechanics happen when you're trying to learn it. Like, you're dead in like the first 40 seconds so many times back to back, and then you finally get it right, and people struggled with Blaster a lot compared to the rest of them.
Right.
Which is why eventually we saw the nerf. Instead of buffing A7 Savage, they nerfed A6 Savage. They got rid of one of the mines. They changed a few other things.
Well, I mean, can they really buff a fight mid-tier? There's a lot of, like...
After what happened with Twintania, I don't know what to think, man. I didn't know what to think anymore after Twintania back in the...
Yeah, I don't think that they could make an argument to their community about buffing a fight mid-tier, because it's rewarded all the people before the buff, compared to the people post-buff. Yeah. So maybe they felt maybe they're backed into a corner, and that had to be the response.
But see, that was the I didn't hear that during world progression. I heard that like weeks later, people were saying A7 Savage.
Same.
So I don't know, how was it? Because I skipped. I didn't kill Midas till way later because I dropped out of world progress tier, so I never got to experience it firsthand. So how was A7? How did it feel during progression compared to A6 Savage?
Well, I mean, okay, see, you have to understand that we're coming fresh out of A6. That was one of the most frustrating sets of progression that we'd ever experienced with the Vortexer problem. So A7 was a breath of fresh air. We were so happy to just be done with A6, and we loved every second of A7 because it's sort of like when you're away from your home for so long, and then you get back home and you're just like, I've missed this so much. The couch there, I've missed that couch so much, and you just lay on the couch for the next 2 hours.
Were the cages the couch?
Yeah, the cages the couch. I don't know. Maybe for the Black Mage, they kind of just sit there, but I think. A7 to me, okay. So this is an interesting topic. So let's think about this. A6 for us was solved mechanically and extremely killable less than 24 hours after we started on it. However, if you remember,
Took 3 days because that goddamn bug. You just had to wait till one
It took
attempt
about
lined up.
It took about 3.5 days for it to die. So the fight was killable within the first 24 hours, but it took an entire 72 plus hours for the fight to die. So when I compared that to A7, A7 was not killable until like 36 to 40 hours into it. Maybe not straight, but it really wasn't killable until like the end of the second night of progression. So there has to be something said about that. Like A6 is killable in the first set of progression. A7 took 2 nights of progression to kill. So when I think about like, was one more over-tuned compared to the other, and people are saying that A7 is easier than A6, I have trouble thinking about that just because I look at how long it took. And if you take away the bug from A6, then A6 would have been a shorter progression cycle compared to A7. So that's where I'm sort of kind of confused. I think that maybe the problem with A6 might have just been Blaster. But
Ass Blaster was more like it. Felt like sometimes.
So, but going through A7 I thought was really fun. A7 was when we switched to a bit of a more defensive style composition, because we favored just focusing and getting through mechanics more than we did DPS, because we weren't seeing really strong DPS checks, but we were seeing a lot of like AoE damage and stuff coming out. So we wanted to sort of play a bit more of a turtle style composition, and I think that because we were able to do that, because A7 didn't have as tight of DPS checks, it was really fun. A7 was this sort of fight where you're figuring out many different phases of mechanics early on into the fight. So it's like an arms race to solve all the phases very quickly. And then what happens throughout A7 is once you solve the mechanics, you're then balancing having 2 or 3 of them pop up at the same exact time.
The theme we talked about for Midas in general earlier.
Yeah, which is essentially the theme of all of Midas, and that is really fun. Speaking personally, to progress through, in my opinion. It's always interesting to me to hear that people felt that A7 was too easy compared to A6, just because I spent less time on A6.
I remember my favorite thing when I eventually got to A7 Savage, like way late, was in the last 30% where the middle is unusable and you have to use the corners where the cages usually are.
Oh, definitely.
That's an easy highlight for me for A7 Savage. I also remember people, if you disconnected from the fight, the boss got a sack.
Okay, so that's something that's worth bringing up about Midas. So we talked a little bit earlier when we were talking about A4 about the Lucrezia style strategy that came about, and that's a strategy that basically involved people suiciding to ignore mechanics.
They didn't want that in Midas.
No, they saw that, and they brainstormed, how do we stop people from dying of their own will to bypass the mechanic in a fight? And their solution was, let's just give the boss a buff.
Every time someone dies.
Everybody dies. Okay, but wait, maybe there's another way they could abuse the fight. What if they abuse a mechanic by just Alt F4ing and desync? Okay, let's just make it so.
Hey, it happened in Twintania.
Yeah, exactly. So everything that they thought, like, well, how can players abuse this? Okay, we're giving them a buff.
They forgot it in one key point, which we'll talk about after A7 Savage.
Oh no.
Yep.
Yeah.
Miu's favorite thing to talk about if he was here. But A7 Savage, I mean, A7 Savage had bugs too. They had, when you got pulled into the ice cage, it would actually freeze you on the way being pulled in.
That's very interesting.
Midas
had no bugs.
Midas had no. There was the doll instantly exploding instead of letting you kill it first. The big doll.
Can't say I recall that. No.
No. Yeah, there's a lot of bugs in A7 Savage also that were unfortunate. And then the position check on the balls sometimes was.
Yeah, I mean that's just sort of how.
Yeah.
That's the game we play.
All right. A7 Savage was a pleasure. I agree. I did it like 4 months later, and I ended up really liking it.
So one thing we should highlight about it that was good about A7 is the interaction with the environment. This is something that existed a number of times throughout Midas, and I love encounters that force you to interact with the environment, and you're not just interacting with a single boss. and I want to see a lot more of that in the future.
All right.
So now,
Oh, that's right. I know what's coming next.
now we get to AA, and there is a topic I'm going to touch in a second. But Hap, do you have the video?
I have the. Luckily, I like that you guys made clips of just the audio, Layla. So I don't have to like go through the video. I could just play.
Sure.
I can just get the Layla. Come on, 50K, 30K.
So,
Come on, I'm gonna home game. I'm gonna home game. You all do.
That was a fun thing. I mean, we got a lot of positive feedback about that when we did that in Gordius. So
Wait, Layla. I'm really confused. We've been talking about how you got world first, but didn't Nerd Scream get world first?
Yes. So
that's easily the best Reddit thread I've ever seen on.
Yeah, and Nerd Scream, they played really well and they really earned it.
All right, I'm gonna play it real quick. It's 47 seconds long. Again, you two won't hear it through the stream, but they'll all hear it. And again, warning: Leroy was also part of this kill, if I'm not mistaken. Was Leroy part of this? Actually, no, he wasn't. Miu was.
Right, it was. Leroy is in the. If you're gonna play the clip, I think you're gonna play. Leroy's has a cameo in VoIP, but he's not. I think I don't know.
Because Miu was the Black Mage, not Leroy.
Mia was the Black Mage, but we had our friend John, who was present with us during progression. He was not raiding with us, but he was just present with us, and he was watching one of our streams. We had a private stream for him. Yeah, we had a private stream for him, and he was watching it. And one of the when he saw that we actually killed the boss, he started going ballistic. And I think we were in Mumble. He was just going ballistic, like yeah, you guys did it. And then he realized like 5 seconds later, oh my god, I'm in the BNS channel. I'm not in their channel. He was yelling at Leroy in the BNS channel, and Leroy was like, oh, they killed it, and then he hopped up and joined their channel. So he's in that clip.
All right, I'm gonna play the clip right now. Again, warning: headset volume. Turn it down a little bit.
Keep it going. Keep it going.
4 seconds.
Keep going.
Keep it going. More heals. More heals.
More heals.
Shrouds
Everything you
up.
have here.
Shrouds up.
Get ready to
Everything.
LD, box. Get ready to LD. I'm gonna
LD.
LD. Everything you have. Everything you have.
Go.
Come on.
I'm
Go.
snapping.
Come on.
Yeah. What the hell?
Oh man, finally.
It's done, boys.
Oh, no, there it was.
Feel my feet.
Was that a one shot, boys? One shot.
I love because Layla, I do remember when the last time you were on the show because I asked you why you're so quiet in that clip.
Oh yes.
And you explained to me that you broke your chair, right? Or you broke something.
I think the chair breaking story is a different story. That was
okay.
turn 9 Savage. Fold broke his chair when we killed Nailed Starned Savage.
Okay. Because I remember you said you like got up and you had to come back to your desk. It's fucking dead.
Oh right, yes. I didn't break my chair, but I knocked it like across the room. Because I had a rolling chair and it flew across the room.
I can't even feel my feet. Is that a one shot, boys? I like the return of was that a one shot, boys?
Just memes.
It's missing Crit the boot shine, but it still has its own charm. As far as
I forgot about that one actually.
I can never forget. I play Monk every day now, so every time I boot shine.
It's been a long line of memes, I'll tell you that.
It's Fold. What are you surprised by any means? Like we said, if we ever have Fold on the show, it's shit posting of the realm. There you go. So
eventually gonna happen.
Hopefully you all enjoyed that fantastic clip.
But there was another video that you had personally, and this gets a lot of praise from the community. I believe the term you used to describe this fight was something called mechanical vomit.
Yeah. Yeah, we're talking about Brute Justice, right? Yeah, Brute Justice, specifically the last phase, but I mean, a lot of phases before that too. One of the things that we highlighted as being a theme of Midas was the fact that they're taking mechanics that you know and know how to work with, but they're throwing them at you in waves of 2 to 3 at a time. And what Brute Justice does is it magnifies that and takes the hardest things in the fight and puts them all together in one giant spirit bomb at the end of the fight and throws them to you all together. And it's a form of mechanic vomit. Yeah, it's just literally vomiting mechanics at you at a rate that's overwhelming. Yeah, so Wing Justice definitely behaved that way.
Yeah, I mean, A8 Savage was kind of an interesting formula because it literally took a mini manipulator, which no one wanted to see, and then it took the 4 bosses from it. Literally just reused the 4 bosses from A6 Savage. I think that's our first ever real council fight. Like, if I would consider the second phase a council fight. I don't know about you.
For sure. I think that we've talked about gauntlets, but we haven't actually talked about council fights. And council is a term I think I don't know if it was born.
You're dealing with more than one boss, basically,
yes.
In a sense. I don't know. Like, obviously, Oppressor has the 0.5, but it's a bit a gauntlet. A council's a bit. There's multiple different bosses with multiple different mechanics.
Exactly,
and they each have their own
factor. They each have their own mechanics, and they're honestly separate bosses.
Yeah.
Each could be an individual boss, but there's multiple.
In fact, they each were an individual boss at some point.
Yes, exactly. It's all 4 of the robots from A6. So I would agree that, yeah, the second phase of A8 was definitely Final Fantasy's first true council encounter. And it's really cool that they did that because it was actually a topic of conversation that came up a lot in Heavensward of, we've seen gauntlets, we've seen DPS burns, patchwork style fights, but we haven't actually ever seen a true council encounter. And then Square Enix comes out with that phase. And I thought that the way that phase unraveled, if they're examining that phase, like looking at, okay, how did the council fight work in our game? Did this work well? I think that they can view that phase as a success. So when they're analyzing Heavensward and thinking about how they're going to design Stormblood, they can view that part of A8 as a success story and maybe apply that formula to future fights.
So, mechanical vomit aside, I mean, all this had to be more fun than the manipulator, right?
For sure.
Fun.
Definitely more fun
than the manipulator. What made it more fun? Because we've got 4 phases in Savage. We've got Onslaughter, who made people math in a way they probably never intended to in raiding. You have the Council phase, which takes literally the 4 bosses from A6 Savage. You have Brute Justice, who literally asks you to stop DPS and just do mechanics.
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
More or less. Obviously, you have tank and healer specific things and positioning and all that.
The DPS check, yeah, was not as required just because they were very static push timings.
And then you have Winged Justice, who is not only a DPS burn, but a check pretty much on every level of gameplay.
Such a fantastic final phase.
Yeah, so... Putting all this together, what really stood out for A8 Savage for you during World Prog especially? Oh, the boss moved, yeah. Well.
The boss moved. I think, the obvious, I guess, would be to talk about the fact that this is the first encounter where they've introduced a Savage-only phase, and that was awesome. I'd love to see them return to that in the future. If they're going to sort of keep this level of difficulty for their normal modes, I think that having like a Savage only phase does provide some incentive for people to go out and try Savage if they want to experience it, which is good. Your game should encourage people to try all facets of it and all the difficulties that it offers. I think probably the Wing Justice phase is what stands out to me the most. I unfortunately have a few negative opinions about how the phase unfolded for reasons similar to my disdain of A4. But overall, like you described the phases, I thought that they all had their own flavor and culminated into this very full final boss of a tier, which is maybe something that they hadn't hit in a long time, not since Nail Du Starnus.
Oh man, that was fun.
I thought that Bahamut Prime final phase didn't really feel like a final phase.
I thought those puddles would stay forever, man.
The puddles should have stayed forever. It would have made such a more interesting phase. Why?
I don't know, man. Akmorn was pretty exciting.
I mean, Akmorn was the only part of that phase.
Listen, man, not knowing when the fucking tethers were gonna snap to you properly was pretty.
Oh yeah, that's.
But that we could have talked about that with Digititis and A3 Savage also. because they've since made steps to make things like digititis less bullshit.
Yes. No, I think they've somewhat succeeded, but it still needs some work.
Yeah. All right. Oh man. Sly, I took over. Sorry, I couldn't stop. I really liked Midas, Sly, and you didn't make it past A6 Savage, so I felt like I needed to take the helm for a lot of this.
Rightfully so. One last thing, you again going into Midas, you said that Midas was pretty much the best tier. It's glaringly obvious what makes it better than Gordius, but what makes it better than the Creator, which we're gonna get to in a minute.
That's a loaded topic. So the best way that I can answer that succinctly is Creator's tuning is another sort of experiment by Square Enix to sort of improve the mass populace's clear rates. It's not Gordius and Midas did not reflect a clear rate that was satisfactory to the devs. So the Creator's tuning is a product of that, and they wanted to see more people clearing their content and experiencing it, which is fine and probably good for the overall state of the game. I'm a little surprised that Midas had as small of a clear rate as it did. Gordius I completely understand, but Midas I would have maybe expected a little bit higher clear rates.
Do you think it's a result of Gordius that Midas even still didn't have it?
Actually, I mean that's probably a good analysis. I think that that definitely has to play a role in it. Teams. Okay, sure. If we're going with that, then teams were probably recovering and rebuilding from the disaster that Gordius was, and it honestly probably took an entire tier for the scene to recover. So that may be why we saw that reflected in the Midas clear rates. That being said, my personal opinion, and I know my opinion is not a universally shared opinion. I felt that Creator was tuned to a level that made it not nearly as fulfilling as it maybe could have been. It was a tier that for the raids for the teams that were raiding the most died in less than 48 hours. And when you're preparing and looking forward to a tier for months, to only be able to enjoy the progression of it for less than 48 hours was kind of a letdown. I expected more, and when I think about Midas, the reason why I think Midas was hit the mark better than Creator in terms of that was Midas was a tier that was clearable without weapons, but required you to push yourself to the limits to be able to make that window. I feel that Midas was a 2-week tier. I mean, obviously it was a 2-week tier. It actually took to the beginning of the 3rd week, but if I'm looking at the tier analytically and asking myself, okay, if my team played perfectly, how fast would this tier have died? I do not think it's a 1-week tier. I think had A6 not had bugs, we still would have been working through A7 in the 1st week, and we would have probably killed A7 in the middle of the 1st week, but I don't think the 2 or 3 days remaining would have been enough to kill Brute Justice. So I think Brute Justice, no matter what, would have been a week 2 kill. And had we played perfectly, you could have seen a week 2 kill. But the conclusion of that story is we didn't see a kill until weapons were awarded in week 3. But an encounter that pushes you that is clearable if pushed to your limits before weapons, I think is the perfect mark of a tier. And I know that's my opinion and not universally shared, but that is how I feel.
And I'll ask you about reward versus fulfillment in a little while. But let's just go ahead and just dive right into Creator.
Hey.
Yeah. Hey, we can talk about it. High five.
Woohoo! You beat this one, Sly.
Yeah. Yeah. So no real horror stories here. I wouldn't say universally, but amongst the majority described as the easiest tier of the 3.
I'd say that's universal.
Up to 3 for sure. I think that's definitely widely accepted.
So we already know that you were disappointed with it. On a scale of 1 to 10, how disappointed were you with this tier?
Okay, so Initially, not as much.
Okay.
When I finished the tier, I didn't have much negativity towards it. I thought that the fights were kind of fun. I thought that A11 and A12 were at least fun. It wasn't until I saw the sort of disappointment in the replayability that I really started feeling the effects of the tier. The more and more gear you get, the less interesting these fights become. And that obviously that's true for every tier, but it had never been true so much. We were skipping massive portions of the fight. The more gear you get, and especially you saw a massive power spike.
Hello, Lapis. Goodbye, Lapis.
Yes, I mean you saw a lot of that play out in A11 specifically. I think that definitely weighed into my feelings of it. But some of the mechanics I'll highlight. I won't speak just only negatively about it. Some of the mechanics were fun. I thought that the A11 mechanics were fun. You know, the fact that they were skippable and that was kind of annoying aside. If you just look at every mechanic individually, they're pretty fun. There's a lot of like movement and people have to be in certain spots, and there's a lot of like managing of the towers in the last phase and stuff, and working through that. That's all cool and probably well designed. The problem is the tuning like really detracts from that, because it takes away from so much of those mechanics because you start not even seeing them.
Well, okay, so first of all, this was the first Heavensward tier where you guys missed the mark on world first.
Yes. I was taking a sip of my water.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it. I remember very specifically the tweet of your comment after it was done and the race was over, is that you were excited it was actually a race. Like, it was fast-paced. Yeah. I remember that being the initial reaction that you were just discussing right here.
Yeah, I think probably what that was referencing was a lot of people like to a lot of people like to sort of put words in the mouths of other raid teams, I guess is the nicest way I could put that. So when the tier was cleared so quickly, a lot of people were like, "Oh, you're the Square Enix. You're gonna scare away your high-end raiders, your hardcore player base. You know, what are you doing, Square Enix?" And this was sort of me reacting to that. Like, look, speaking from that demographic, I don't think many of us care how difficult or not difficult a boss is. I think I speak for most people, you know, in that world progression scene, that we do it for the thrill of the race. The competition is what makes it fun at the end of the day. And you're going to have competition in a sprint, and you're going to have competition in a long distance marathon. You know, you saw a long distance marathon in A4, and you saw a sprint in Final Coil and Crater. Both are competitions in their own way, and competition is fun, and that's sort of the point that I was trying to make.
So I'm getting the impression that you're not all for sprints, though, because if we had to call Crater a sprint, we would call A8 Savage, sure, you know, a cross country race.
If I had to pick between the two, I definitely favor a tier that goes a bit long, not just a bit longer. I favor
that beatable before, feels like it's beatable before weapons that you were talking about before.
That's exactly where my favored difficulty lies. I'd like to see. I like to participate in encounters that are killable before weapons with very good play, but push you to your limits before the weapons. Because weapons are really the turning point in a progression cycle. They're the massive power spike.
Except in Manipulator.
Yeah, okay, that's true.
5 weeks, I think it was. Well, 5 weeks.
Without spending too much time on Manipulator, though, a lot of people who they won't be familiar with how Manipulator actually unfolded. I can tell you that you have to break down Manipulator into like 3 things. It's like Manipulator before weapons, you couldn't even practice all portions of the fight because you couldn't make the DPS checks required to see the later phases. So you had to wait for weapons to come before you could actually practice the later parts of the fight because you couldn't make the leg timing windows that you needed to. And then once you get weapons, you then realize, oh, we don't have enough HP or overall DPS to actually kill the fight, even though we can now practice the rest of it. So now we're waiting for more HP to be able to survive the fight. So it's like you have 2 walls that existed in Manipulator progression, and that's too much. 1 wall, it's still not even enjoyable. When you have 2, that's way too much.
Okay, all right. We started talking about the manipulator again, and I just.
Yeah.
You got
Not
flashbacks.
to get sidetracked.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, Sly.
So, what would you say was the fight you liked the most in terms of world prog for a creator?
For creator, I would say, I did not like A9 at all. One thing that actually people might not be familiar with is there was actually a kind of annoying bug in A9.
A bug? No.
Yeah.
What?
It got hotfixed very quickly. Or actually, did it? It might. I'm actually trying to remember. It might have not gotten. I mean, creator happened so fast because it only lasted less than 48 hours that it might have not been fixed until later in the week. But there was a bug with the players holding the bombs would randomly drop the bombs if they
I do remember that.
Yeah, if they had like an AOE effect hit them or something, like even a friendly AOE effect. So
That happened in normal too.
If you had a Medica 2 or a Fairy buff go out, it would just force your player to drop the bomb. And oh my god, we had that happen to us like a dozen times, and it took somebody in our FC chat, Seller, noting why it was happening for us to figure it out. It was so annoying. Cost a couple pulls. So I don't like A9. I think that A10 was cool. I thought like I said earlier, I was a big fan of environmental interactions. So I think that
The buttons.
I think that the way A10 unfolded was cool. Is my favorite though? Probably not. I'm thinking that A11 was probably my favorite. It was. Yeah, it was just. I don't know specifically what about it was. I think it was the fact that it was sort of this. It was very dynamic. You sort of had to. The boss was not scripted. He would sort of change what he does randomly with a very strict set of parameters. Like you can only do one or two different things. But because it was dynamic, each pull was different than the last. So while you're progressing through it, it's not mind numbing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought just aesthetically, the boss looked cool and was fun. I will say that the active time event that they have in it is a complete waste of time.
I love the way they described the active time event when they had the live letter, where they said that they used to have you do a combination of buttons and that they just fucked it up so much, so they got rid of it.
Yeah, I was expecting. I was hoping for that.
Like Flash Revolution, that would have been fine.
I was expecting more.
Yeah. So A11 is your favorite.
I would say so.
At the same time, this is a fight that has skippable mechanics.
Yes.
A whole lot.
It was. So I guess I should. I should preface that. It's my favorite during progression.
Okay.
Post progression, probably A12. I think A12 survived the test of time a lot more so than the previous three bosses.
Minus second puddles. That's about the only one.
Right. So again, A12 was a fight that could have been a lot more interesting had it been tuned a little bit higher, because I think that one of the most intricate portions of the fight is that final phase with the puddles, and some teams don't even see that because they just kill the boss before it even happens. So that's probably a little bit unfortunate. If you're progressing through a fight, you should probably have to see all the phases, especially if it's a final boss.
Yeah. Zervin would know about that.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, like, chain of events that occurred, it seems.
Yes, I would say so. So I kind of want to backtrack a little bit again, because we're talking about your favorite fight here, talking about the surviving. You very briefly brought up prep for the tiers and how this tier you thought that like you prepared and that was done so fast and whatever. How did preparation change tier to tier then? Because you didn't know how to prepare for Gordius. Then Gordius happens, and then you have Midas that they tell you is going to be different, and then you have Creator, which again they say is probably going to be the easiest of the three tiers. Like, there's a lot of information.
Sure. So on the off chance that I do participate again in like a world race, I don't want to give too much away on how I prepared for Gordius, because it's going to be very similar to how I prepared for Stormblood. But the way that like preparation evolved, I think you have to look at Gordius and compare it to the other two, because Gordius was a new expansion. it's a very different set of style of preparation compared to something like Midas or Creator. And this upcoming patch 4.0 is going to be very similar to how teams prepared in Gordius. And it's going to be an arms race for information. That's really what it's going to be. You know, when you're preparing for Creator, everything's kind of figured out. Like, honestly, Heavensward was kind of solved. Maybe the only possible question mark, if you can call it a question mark, and you know, this isn't even true for teams like Angered, who apparently had it all figured out. The only question mark for everybody except maybe Angered was the Astrologian going into 3.4. And you know, other than that, Heavensward was pretty much figured out at that point. Going into 4.0, we have an entire new game, and nothing's going to be figured out of the gate. And it's going to be our job to sort of figure things out as much as we can heading into 4.0. You know, we have that opening set of 2 to 4 weeks, and that's really where there's just going to be.
Well, 4 weeks now. 4 weeks for Savage.
Yes, for Savage, yes.
Yeah. Sly, you had a question. You specifically put this question in there, so I gotta let you take it.
So, do you think comps got a little more creative this tier? In what I forget what patch it was, but Bard's got a huge buff in
God.
it. And everything damn near God tier. And like I noticed a bunch of groups centering their comps around it. So was there a lot of creativity this year with the comps?
No.
No?
I don't know. I saw Angered go Summoner. I know I saw the mission. I mean, I guess for me, when I looking at it, it's more like there's the FF logs comp and then there's progression comp.
Here's the bottom line. There exactly. In progression, there's really not a lot of variation in what you did. I will be fair. Because of the way Creator is tuned, yes, it allows for more flexibility. I guess I was more so reacting to what was completely optimal for min-maxing. But yeah, because of the way Creator was tuned, it does allow for more flexibility in the comps that you can use to clear a fight. I will 100% agree with that. So if that's what you're speaking to,
and I got stuck on fucking Machinist again.
If that's what you're speaking to, then yes, I agree. But I do think that what happened before 3.4 is a certain set of classes have been buffed so much that it sort of snowballed into this composition that stacked so much DPS synergies that it sort of does trump all of its competition.
Bard, what the fuck are they thinking with balance and Bard? Those balance and Bard buffs, I will never know.
I mean, if you take those buffs in a isolated environment, in a vacuum, they're okay. And I made quotation marks with my fingers. I'll have you know they're okay. When you stack all them together and everything leads up to and everything leading up to the balance changes, you have what we saw in 3.4, which was a giant snowball after effect.
It was fucking ridiculous. And I had to do a whole tier without a Dragoon as Machinist, man.
I think that
so sad.
I think that they really do need to hit the reset button a little bit in that regard, because if it continues, it's going to snowball worse and worse.
Well, let's hope that Stormblood is a reset. I mean, generally, an expansion should be.
No,
to some degree.
I'm expecting that it will be. So I don't even feel the need to probably highlight it.
And a while back, you mentioned, a few minutes ago, you mentioned fulfillment in terms of the Creator and how there was, for you, lack thereof. Is there any aspect they could have changed to kind of balance fulfillment and reward? Because this is different for some people. Some people did get fulfillment out of it. Now, I don't know if they were wearing, rose-tinted glasses because of Midas and Gordius, and that kind of changed their view on the fulfillment. But is there any aspect they could have changed to kind of balance out fulfillment and reward?
I'm not sure. I think that when I was talking about this the other day, because this was brought up on my stream, I think that one of the reasons why Creator behaved the way it did was sort of a result of the big snowball we were talking about, combined with them also lowering difficulty in terms of tuning. And I think when you combine those two, you do get the very extreme nature that creator is and was designed as. I think in order for me to find more fulfillment, I just need to have a little bit more. I guess I feel like I have to be working. I feel like I have to be earning what I get a little bit more, because some of the bosses in creator are so pushover that you don't even get to enjoy the process. And I think that's the problem. Progression has to last a length long enough for you to like savor it and enjoy what you're doing. You know, it's really funny. When we first brought up creator, and I was trying to remember like A9 and A10, the progression cycle lasted such a short amount of time that I had to actually stop and think about it. Like, what was the progression cycle even like? And it's the only tier where I have to do that. You know, I think about all the other tiers, and I can pretty much tell you exactly how the progression cycle behaved. But creator happened so fast, and it was blitzed through so quickly that I have to stop and think about, wait, what actually happened? And that's
you blinked and it was over.
Yeah, and that's not enjoyable. Like you're it's like half of the tier I don't even get to savor and enjoy. So I want to see that maybe addressed, and maybe have the progression cycle last a bit longer.
So with that out of the way, with creator, Stormblood is in less than 40 days, and 4 weeks after that is Omega Savage.
Yes.
Which, by the way, according to the forums, the title that Yoshi P gave it is Interdimensional Rift Delta, Chapter Delta, which I'm assuming is going to get translated differently for us. And he actually was testing it today, and he had his battle team carry him through the fights.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So going into Omega Savage, here are the expectations we've been given. Mm-hmm. The first tier will be the easiest of the 3 tiers.
That's fine.
Because they want people who are easing into all the new jobs to actually pick up the skills and be able to learn through. As opposed to Gordius, where
exactly we talked about earlier, like what happened. What would happen if Creator was first, Midas was second, Gordius was third?
Right.
Maybe that would have been more favorable, and maybe that's what they're going to hope to achieve with Omega.
Yeah. Now that's not to say that means the final tier of Omega should be comparable to Gordius difficulty.
No, and I don't think it ever will.
But they are aiming for. If a raid group gets together, they should feel like they can go through all of the bosses in a row and feel like there was an actual curve, as opposed to fucking whatever this thing is.
Do you think that curve continues from, say, Omega 4 to Omega 5?
I think that can't. First, I don't believe that could be possible. I think that
I don't think so either. That's why I'm wondering.
I think it's more like if you look at the average of the curve for each one, it goes up. In a sense, but it's always going to be where the first fight of the next tier is easier than the last fight of the previous tier.
Sure.
But then by the end of that tier, the final fight there is a clear step above the previous tier. We still know how many bosses it's going to be. That's been made pretty clear to us that the number of bosses will remain the same. But the one thing that's changing, the dynamic that's changing, is in all the odd-numbered patches, they're providing a fight for the 1%, they're claiming.
Okay, yes, yeah. In the filler patches.
Yes, so that way there is something to race on in the odd-numbered patches. I'd imagine that has to be tuned to the like maximum item level, like 4 months of item level farming.
It has to, for sure.
Yeah. So when seeing all of this combined, what are your kind of hopes for Omega Savage? Let me call it Interdimensional Rift Savage. For the entirety of 4.x, where do you kind of place your expectations here?
Where do I want my expectations to be, or what?
What are your realistic expectations based on Heavensward, based on information from interviews?
So what do I think is going to happen?
What do you think is going to play out?
I think that we're going to see something similar to how Creator behaved. Which is not my preference, but I do believe that's what's going to happen. I think that specifically what you highlighted earlier about they want the player base to be able to go through a raid tier learning new jobs. They want people to play their jobs first off. You know, some of the new jobs weren't played in Gordius because people weren't good enough at them yet, and B, they just weren't tuned to a perfectly specific level that helped them meet the Gordius requirements. Machinist was not tuned well enough to be able to meet some of the requirements in some of the fights. Although actually Machinist did okay. I'm not going to use that as an example. I think that we'll probably see something similar to Creator in 4.0. And then I think we'll see the first big experiment for them in 4.1. And it's interesting that you said they'll add a fight for the 1%, because I know this is a topic that's come up a couple times.
It's been unclear. Content yes. For the 1%, we should say.
My expectation is that we're not going to get a tier.
No.
It is not reasonable.
It's not feasible.
No. This is going to be something that's kind of, I view as cost efficient for them. And it's probably not going to it's not going to be the focus of their development. And for that reason, we're probably not going to see a fully fleshed out tier. It's probably going to be a maybe super savage version of the final boss of the previous tier or something.
That's my exact expectation as well.
I could expect that, and because of that, I don't particularly think. Some people are saying that, oh, well, the odd patches are going to replace the progression race from the even patches. I really don't think that's going to be the case.
No, there's no way. You can't have a
single fight. It does not replace the thrill of a race through a tier. It just doesn't. You're still going to see, I think, the primary focus. This is my expectations. I'm still expecting to see the primary focus of the progression races happening in the even set of patches.
Well, that's where overcoming gear deficiency is a thing. Mm-hmm. Whereas Second Coil Savage was not overcoming gear deficiency; it was overcoming, well, I guess, health checks and mechanics being uncheesable.
That being said, on the 5% chance that they surprise us with an entirely new tier, hell yeah, I'm all for it.
Do you want, like, reward-wise, because they seem to be implying it's almost exactly like Second Coil Savage, which was to hit, people, you're getting, the only thing you're getting is the sense of progression out of it.
I'm okay with that.
You're not building a reward, maybe a title or something, and you're okay with the Second Coil Savage reward structure?
What I'm expecting to happen is something in the form of glamour, mount, and titles. I think that we're going to see, I think they've learned from Second Coil Savage that there needs to be something tangible in the reward, and a title is not enough. There needs to be something physical that they can show off and feel proud of to get people really interested in participating. And I think that they see stuff like armor aesthetics and mounts to be the way to do that. I don't expect to see an eye level increase in the rewards. I think that would be a very polarizing way to go about it, because then you're punishing the people who don't participate, and it basically makes the barrier of entry to the next tier much more hard to tune for. Do you tune for 1%? Because then you're going to leave your 1% unhappy if you tune it too easy, and then you're going to leave your 99%.
You want to talk about dead in 48 hours? Give me 5 extra item levels in all in all my slots.
Yep. So I guess overall that's my expectations.
And going off of that, something we kind of talked about in the past, I guess, with all the interviews is raid incentive. Like, it's kind of the instant gratification behind raid. But, challenge and gear with the whole new, new tier or a fight. And then them talking about, like, achievement-based rating or incentive behind that. Is there anything you would like to see implemented along those lines?
For sure. Oh, I've been very outspoken about this. I think that the achievements are an extremely underutilized part of the game right now. I think there's two things that are really underutilized. I think the duty timer and achievements are highly underutilized by the development team right now.
Which luckily Frosty hit in his interview recently.
I was really happy for him to ask that. I think that again, I go back to cost efficiency. Like, yes, I want something from the developers, but I'm not ignorant enough to think that they're able to meet my every demand. So I want to think about what would make me happy that's cost efficient for them. And I think about them taking a fight, not really changing it very much, if at all, and just putting a parameter around that fight for a clear parameter. And if you clear it under this parameter, you get an achievement that yields X reward. and say, I actually don't want to be put on the spot right now. I'm thinking of an example, but there's a lot of cool things they could do with that, and it's it's an untapped resource, I think, right now. The achievement system for rating.
No, I'd say in general. In general,
Okay.
the achievement system in the game feels.
Well, I think
only
in
know
general,
about
it doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, in general, I think it's really too much of a non-issue. I think it would only, well, I wouldn't say only apply, but applies more to raiding than anything. Everything else, like dungeons and shit, while it's nice.
See, but I
really
think
don't
back
care
to
about
WoW, and I loved some of the dungeon like working on it, getting every dungeon achievement that they had there. Like I look back at those times, and I mean, I played WoW for 3 years. I look at those unique challenges that are presented, even if it's just finishing it within a certain parameter that's not really that special. It's the achievement of it. As
But the
opposed to
question
do this 10 times, do this 100 times, do this 1,000 times, do this
Yeah,
10,000
that's
times.
the thing. The question is, does it take away from the monotony of dungeons that's already there?
So the monotony in dungeons, I feel, would come from the achievements that ask you to do 10, 100, 1,000. Like we have those already.
Yes,
We have
I don't like those.
Yeah.
And I would stay away from those and make more interesting conditions and parameters for the achievements.
Like even when I'm playing, like obviously you can't compare a single player game to an MMO, but when I think of single player game achievements, there are some that are just straight up grinds, but there's some of them that ask you to do something that can demand you to play a certain way, and that's a different play style. It's a different experience than what I was presented the first time.
Let me give you a really cool example building off that single player analogy. You think of a game like Final Fantasy Tactics, where you have all sorts of different options for your team makeup and stuff, and there are cool little conditions that the community has made, like clear the game with only this set of jobs, clear this fight with doing this strategy, or clear this fight in X number of turns, player turns, and stuff like that is really fun to me, and it does take away from the monotony of the replayability.
Even looking at Final Fantasy V, the 4-job fiesta.
Yeah, I'm less familiar with Final Fantasy V, but yeah, that's another good example.
It's basically where when you unlock new jobs, you random the jobs for one of the players, and that's your job for the rest of the game. So by the time you've unlocked,
exactly, yeah.
Every time you've unlocked, and once you you unlock the first set of jobs, you roll for the first person. The second set of jobs, you roll for the second person. Third, fourth, and then that's it. Whatever you rolled, that's what your goal is to complete the game as.
You know where my mind immediately went as you're talking about that?
What?
How can that be utilized in Palace of the Dead? That would be really fun.
What you mean, do it? Well, the problem with Palace of the
jobs in Palace of the Dead.
I mean, they would have to support it. Is the thing. They'd have to basically be able to look at what each you'd have to basically sign up as multiple jobs. They'd have to let you queue. We need a system in the game that will let you queue as multiple jobs first, and then autofill you.
Maybe have a requirement.
Which, by the way, is something that honestly, considering Final Fantasy XIV is built the way it is, being able to queue as multiple jobs and play as the one that actually gets the queue at once should be something that we should be looking to support anyway. Because
I agree.
We're like one of the only games that could feasibly do
the
that.
armory system is like very
underutilized
and unique and underutilized.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we've hit we hit a few points there that we could hopefully look to
It's probably a show idea in there somewhere.
There's probably a show idea in there somewhere. Well, I mean, we could.
What we haven't done?
We'll poke the man, Layla. We'll poke the man.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was surprised to see that he's starting to be more willing for set bonus. How do you feel about set bonuses as a raid incentive? Do set bonuses excite you?
Oh, of course they excite me. So let me. Okay, so I promised not to talk about WoW much, but I will tell you how they function in WoW, so that people can have an idea of like what they would be expecting to see in Final Fantasy. The thing that happens with it at each new tier in a game like WoW is your set bonus changes the way your character's rotation and gameplay. It changes those things so much from tier to tier that each tier it's kind of like you're learning something new about your class. So it's not like by the time Midas came out, I sort of felt that I had kind of learned, I would say 98% about Warrior. Whereas maybe if I had a new set bonus, I'm down to maybe 90%, and I got to learn that extra 10%.
Is learning 98% of Warrior just when all but 2 buttons are fell cleave?
Yeah, there you go. Pretty much.
There you go. Oh man. All right, yeah. So I think Slyh had one point he wanted to hit for Creator Savage before we wrapped up, or for Stormblood's rating. For Stormblood rating.
Well, two things.
Okay.
One might be might be kind of a sore spot for you, Layla, that we really haven't talked about much, and I know you are in your feelings about it, especially for the final one, primals.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, naturally, primals come secondary in nature in terms of raid, but what were your opinions for the primals in terms of first day content? Not counting like replayability or anything like that, but first patch day content. What were your opinions?
It's going to vary from primal to primal for obvious reasons, but I think that, so I'll highlight the one that I liked the most, and that was Sephiroth. Why did I like Sephiroth? I like Sephiroth because Sephiroth actually was a part of the raid tier, and it affected progression. Teams had to, Sephiroth was released at the same time as a new Alexander raid tier, and Sephiroth offered weapon upgrades for teams that were participating, and teams had to sort of like plan their progression route of when they're going to go and farm Sephiroth for upgrades versus when they're going to be clearing Alexander, and that non-linearity in progression was, I thought, really healthy for the raiding community and the overall like raiding strategy. So I think back that was a success story. Other than that, the primals are kind of a secondary thing. They're not really ever the focus of conversation, and I specifically look at fights like Zervin as being huge negatives. Zervin, I think, is honestly a disgrace to the primals that came before it. It basically says that you don't need to, you really don't even have to try to be able to kill me and take my loot. And
any fight that you can, queue in first day of patch and complete in 3 pulls, 20 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, Zervin went down real fucking fast.
Right.
Yeah, one of the things that got brought up in chat just now was Thornton, and Thornton was an amazing primal. I will say that even though it didn't affect a major progression cycle, fights like Thornton, I thought the game was really heading in a good direction in terms of primals, and we saw Thornton I think in 3.1, so it was leading up to Midas, and that was sort of the first fight that players had after the manipulator. And it was one that was very welcoming back to the game. I took a little bit of a break before 3.1, and I came back the day of 3.1. And going through Thornton was like really refreshing and enjoyable. So that being said, I want to see them continue primals, maybe on as interesting and difficult as Thornton on the filler patches, and the ones I do want to continue to see primals on the main patches, the main raid patches, and if I'm not opposed to them offering upgrades that will directly affect progression. I think that if they don't, it's going to become ignored content, and that's not really what the developers want to see. They don't want to spend hours and hours designing a fight only to have players ignore it 20 hours into the patch.
Speaking of which, that brings up one very interesting point I want to hit.
Yes,
Sophia, who did offer upgrades, but they were crafted weapons.
Yes, it was a crafted alternative, and the crafted was obviously much more time efficient for people to acquire rather than learning and farming Sophia mid progression.
Which I'm sure,
yeah.
sure you're not a big fan of.
I don't think it, like, in terms of Sophia, it was...
It came down, if you were doing world progression, you went for the crafted weapons. If you were just doing normal, just raiding with your friends.
Fair.
Yeah, mid-core, I would say mid-core raid, it was a bit feasible in terms of the time because, you had time to, go in.
That's fair.
And people learned it pretty quick in terms of the mid-core scene. And for me, we just took a day. It took maybe 2 or 3 days. And then on the third day, we just farmed it and got Sophia weapons. I did have a crafted weapon, but I swapped it out for my Sophia weapon.
I think back to something like Leviathan. Leviathan came out the day of Second Coil, and I was raiding kind of a casual schedule in Second Coil, and my team didn't really raid until 8 o'clock Eastern at night, the night of the patch. So leading up to that raid time, we had a lot of people get together and farm the Leviathan weapons because I think the if a Leviathan weapon dropped with a mirror, you could buff it to be better than an elegant weapon. So we were just farming Leviathan for potential upgrades, and that was fine. So from the teams that aren't necessarily alarm clocking, then farming Sophia was a great alternative. Probably one of the reasons I scowled at this topic was I really did not like the idea of the crafted gear that
Yeah, that's why I brought it up in the first place, because we didn't hit that at all. It takes it brings me flashbacks back to Final Coil, where you meld all the vitality basically to survive the mechanics.
So I don't know how much we want to get into this, but it's something I brought up on Twitter the other day. One of the reasons I didn't like crafted gear and the way it unfolded in, say, Final Coil or Creator is it becomes this like big distraction, and it's a very polarizing thing. I don't know if we want to get into this, because it honestly is a very long topic, and I'll try to respect you guys' time. But I think that I'm not sure that there's many reasons that they shouldn't just stagger Savage releases a few weeks after a patch is dropped. Always, look at the way that Gordius and now Omega, the first tiers, are going to behave.
Yeah.
It's being dropped 2 weeks. Well, the normal is being dropped 2 weeks after the expansion launch, because they've said that they want people to learn the jobs and have the luxury to experience the content without stress. And if they are releasing Savage 1 to 2 weeks after every major patch is launched, then that gives you the 1 to 2 weeks to not only enjoy the things like MSQ and the 4-mans that they put in a patch, but also be able to prepare the crafted gear that they're apparently tuning their raid tier for, and not have to be doing it mid-progression, which I don't know a single team that enjoys the process of getting crafted gear mid-progression. And if you do, you're kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
I don't. My fucking wallets are just like, for no fucking reason, I have to empty my coffers to get this shit done, like, ASAP.
Yeah, it's not even about the money. It's just about the fact that, like, while you're raiding, you just want to be focusing on raiding, and you don't want to have to be balancing, like, communicating and organizing crafters on the side. And even in big FCs like Elysium and most likely Angered, it's sort of a streamlined process.
Yeah.
However, it would be much more streamlined if we had the 1 to 2 weeks before the raid to prepare.
Yeah, I also am of the opinion that if I would say any crafted gear that competes with like raid ready stuff, I always want the stuff to come from the raid. I'm one of those people. I want, if I'm crafting stuff, I mean, obviously, if you're going to do that, then it has to be higher than the item level that it is going in. But, like, it's raid gear. That's what it is, ultimately. It's just not it's not raid item level. It's clear in week 1 item level, or clear.
I mean, personally speaking, like, what they're trying to do with crafted gear is, I don't necessarily know if they're expecting their raid teams to have full crafted gear. Obviously, that's what they know that they'll do it. They're not. That's not who they're designing it for, but they know that they'll do it. Exactly. So the crafted gear is supposed to be a bit of an alternative for, say, the black mage in the mid-core static that doesn't get any drops, and he needs something to sort of progress his character to be able to survive a fight. It doesn't. You're not so restricted to the loot RNG with your progression. That's the kind of the point of crafted gear, but for the teams that are just maxing out on crafted gear, it's a very kind of uninteresting process.
Yeah, I don't know. I find it uninteresting in general, but I want crafters to make money. So
yeah, well, I mean, make it if they want to do that. The medium that I propose is give us a week leading up to the release of a raid, where crafted gear will be available and able to be crafted, and people can prepare it and not be distracted by it during progression.
Honestly, I think they're going to move towards that anyway, the 2-week thing that you're suggesting, because
I would love that.
I don't think it has anything to do with that though. I think they've seen now with 3.5 the success of staggering content. And that we will continue to see stagger, like you'll continue to see like Palace of the Dead type content in in between patches. You'll see a lot more in between patch content and less upfront patch content is what I feel.
It works very well in other games. I can tell you firsthand.
Yeah, well, I know too.
Yeah, exactly.
I play a lot of games too, Layla.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a feeling they'll move towards that, especially with them talking about Stormblood. They keep talking about how, this is planned for 4.1. This is planned for, between 4.1 and 4.2. This is planned for 4.2. This is planned for 4.05. They're talking about all the increments. They're not just talking about the launch.
And I'll be honest, the people look at me as a hardcore raider, but I mean, I'm somebody who does enjoy the MSQ, and I want to be able to enjoy the MSQ when a new patch launches. And at the moment, when you're doing world progression, you're escape. You just hit escape 0-0 on every cutscene because you don't have time to enjoy it, and it's kind of unfortunate because I do want to be able to enjoy it. So giving me a week to do that would be really cool.
You heard it, guys. World First Progression Raider says, give us 2 weeks. So
Please
do.
And one final thought from me.
All right, one final thought, and then I'm going to eat barbecue.
Ass. One final question. And this is more for the newer people who, you're gonna have this every expansion who people who enter the raiding scene for the first time. We had it in Heavensward. Do you have any tips for people entering the raid scene now? And are your tips for now different from what you would have said somebody going into Heavensward raiding for the first time?
Let me think about this. I want to make it good. I think that if you're just getting into raiding right now, it is the perfect time to do so. We have a big reset button happening with the release of Stormblood. Hopefully. But at least gear-wise, we have a big reset button. Everybody's going to be on an equal playing field of gear for the initial few weeks there. And there's going to be a bunch of new jobs released, and there's going to be one of the things I talked about.
All right, a bunch. Calm down. All right.
Okay.
Two.
Sorry.
Two.
There's 2 new jobs released. But what about that hidden third one that I keep seeing about?
Puppet Master.
Yeah. When are they going to release Puppet Master? So when they release the 2 new jobs plus the hidden one, we're going to be sort of learning those. There's no hidden jobs. Sorry, guys. We're going to be learning those 2 new jobs, and like I talked about earlier, there's going to be an arms race for information about them. And, being a part of that arms race, this will put you sort of on an equal playing field with those people. And for that reason, and the gear reset, I think it's a great time to get into Stormblood rating or get into Final Fantasy rating. The best thing that I can advise somebody getting into it is to be a part of your server's community. Hopefully it has one. If not, you may need to look elsewhere, and meet people who think alike and who have the same goals as you do. That's the most important thing when you're preparing for any raid tier, is be a part of a team that shares the same goals across your team members, and just try to surround yourself with that environment, and don't have expectations that aren't communicated properly to your teammates. Otherwise, you run the risk of just being disappointed or disappointing someone else, and then you're stuck with all that nonsense. I don't know if that answers the question in a good manner, but that's what I got.
Yeah. No, that's generally what I feel is the best, is like-mindedness.
Yeah.
Mine also would be willing to improve. Don't just be like, well, this is how I play.
Okay, so that's worth highlighting. Yeah, if you're new to raiding in the game, first please accept that you're new and that you do not know everything, and you probably don't even know a lot. And if you do that, you're better off than probably a lot of the competition.
That takes me back to that Reddit post you once read, Happy. What was it? It was the random. They kept the names. They kept the names. Anonymous, but they were talking about things like this is the way I play. You don't pay my sub. Things like that. This is a really good piece of advice especially for newer players and currents actually too.
Yeah, and current players, by the way.
I'll agree with that. All right. Show ran on a little long. We were going to touch on the ton of screenshots that released this week. Although really it's all speculation, so I don't know, we can really have much of a discussion other than Warrior is clearly getting the best new abilities so far.
I'm
from what I
really
can
get to talk about how OP Red Mage is going to be with the wealth of information that we have. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that we didn't get to talk about how great Samurai is going to be with all the things that we know.
We didn't get to talk about the double Samurai Ninja Machinist composition yet.
Yeah, we didn't get to do that. That's terribly unfortunate. But anyway, Layla, I'm gonna give you the floor here. Normally we do this the part where where you say, oh, you can find me here, here, and here. But if you also, on top of that, want to throw up any last words, don't throw up, but throw out any last words. Don't do that. I mean, if it's Taco Bell, go right ahead. You can throw up all you want. But
oh, no.
if there's any like final closing words you have right here, this is the time to say. Let's blow up this picture of you and Yoshi right here.
Okay, so I mean, first and foremost, I want to thank you guys for having me on. I haven't been on the show nearly long enough time, so it's always a pleasure. And I respect what you guys do, and I'm glad to be a part of it. So thank you for inviting me on. So no, you guys put on a great show, and I just want to say for the people looking forward to Omega, please go out and no, don't. I'm not gonna say that. Please go out and try all the content that the developers put out. People have spent hours and hours and hours and weeks and months of their lives into this content, and it's really important that we get to experience it, and not only experience it but react to it. And I encourage everyone to, if you're not participating in Savage currently, to think about maybe trying your hand at it in Omega, because they're trying to learn from what happened in Heavensward and make it an enjoyable experience for the overall player base that they're making the game for. So that being said, please, the 98% of you that are going to roll Samurai, somebody please play a healer for my dungeon queues while leveling. And I guess beyond that, some shout outs for where you can find me if you're interested in listening to all the dumb stuff I say. I have a Twitter. It's my personal gaming Twitter. It's at Layla FFXIV. It's typically the best place to follow me if you're interested in what's going on in my crazy head. I do have a Twitch. Currently, it's twitch.tv/KlopsTTV, although I think that's kind of a stupid name, so maybe I'll change that soon.
Didn't you already change it from Klops VA to Klops TTV?
I did change it because Klops VA was Klops Virginia, and I don't live in Virginia anymore. So, but I'll find something new and fresh, and I'll tweet about it. So make sure you follow me on Twitter. And I want to give a shout out to my FC that I've been a part of for the entirety of Heavensward and even before. Elysium, thank you for supporting me throughout Heavensward and all of my kooky adventures. And I hope that we all continue to enjoy Stormblood and keep going the game.
I still think that Layla Bell is the best name that we can ever have. I'm just saying. I think Layla Bell is the best name.
Well, I think Alice right now has that name.
All right, there you go. All right, and on that note, Sly, where can they find you at?
You can find me at twitch.tv/Slyakagreyfox. You can find me on Instagram, Slyakagreyfox07. You can find me on Twitter at Slythefox. You can find me on YouTube.com/thevelvetroom. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Perhaps, where can't they find you?
Where can't they find me?
Yeah.
Grinder. Noted. You cannot find me there until somebody makes a fake account after this. So then you can, I suppose, but it's not.
Oh, you've incited the internet.
It's not really me. All right, there you go. You can find me Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all Mr. Happy 1227. So those are the places you absolutely can find me. I promise. I also promise you cannot find me on the Grinder. All right? There's a funny story about that I think I've told Sly before, but I've told my stream, I know that. It's a funny story where I thought someone was asking me if I had a Grinder account because I had coffee next to me, and they're like, do you have a Grinder? And then my phone was next to the coffee. So I thought they were pointing at my phone, like asking if I had a Grinder account, and I was like, like a coffee grinder. Okay.
It's like, no, but really, do you have...
No, that's not what... And then he goes, no, I didn't mean that.
We'll see next week.
So, actually, we need to do that real quick. Next week, the show will not be on Tuesday. The the show would be on Thursday. Is that cool with you, Sly?
That is cool with me.
All right. What the show will be about, wait till next week.
That question will be answered Thursday night.
That question will be answered this Thursday night.
I know what it's gonna be about.
I know you know what it's gonna be about. Well, I know you know. All right, but on that note, before we say anything we're just not supposed to, we're gonna go. So goodbye.
Cut the stream.
Cut the stream.
See you next week.
All right, we're good.